came back. If it wasn't for this workshop, I think I'd still be in Thailand. But when I woke up, I was in Thailand, and I was in a little island called Koh Phangan, and then I flew to Bangkok, and I flew to Tokyo, and I flew back here, and I came here, pretty much took a shower. We're here for a shower here.
Good man.
So I'm going to play this little, I've got a little, it's really called like a sizzle reel. This does a little bit of kind of explaining what I do. A wide variety of all different ways that I've convinced the universe that I can add value to it through being creative. And it kind of starts here.
I'm really fortunate today that I have my mom, Colleen, in the audience today. Everything that's good about me came from this woman right over here. And it's really because of the support that my parents gave me that I'm even have this opportunity to speak with you and have this lifestyle that I've created. I started drawing at a really young age, and both my parents were just incredibly supportive of that. I took private art lessons out on Pearl Street, and I had lessons when I was, when was I seeing Rita? When did those lessons start? 7 or 8. I had, like, once a week I would meet this one woman, Rita Irington, and she would take me through like a half hour of blind contour drawing every day, and then still lifes, and it was, you know, the most boring thing in the world. I just wanted to like draw Thundercats. And so she would force all of these things. It was kind of this whole like wax on, wax off. I had no idea why she was putting me through all these routines, but only now later in life I realized how valuable these things are. So I was very fortunate that I had really a supportive upbringing. I think one of the things that when I look back and I kind of meditate on what were the benefits and the payoffs I got from being creative, like why did I kind of choose this? I had this insight that I think a lot of it really, they say that human beings express themselves through like 5 different types of love languages. And I can just remember having this experience of being able to make a piece of art, make a drawing, I mean, you didn't know it was art back then, and giving it to my mom or my dad and seeing how happy they were from that. So I think art for me started off as like a love language that I could express, you know, my gratitude for the people around me. And I think whenever I kind of maybe lose sight of things or get confused or overwhelmed, I kind of come back to that kind of realization that, you know, it's the work I create, a lot of it is, I'd like to consider it to be kind of an act of love. So this is a self-portrait number 1. This was sound is a huge influence in the work that I create. I do a lot of work with musicians. A lot of the work that I create, sometimes I say like the most important decision that I can make when I'm making a piece is like choosing what my soundtrack is going to be. So I've always loved the relationship between that. This is back in 1986. This is the flame lizard. We grew up I was raised on a farm out in Lyons, Colorado. It was pretty rural, it was pretty isolated. There was no paved roads to skateboard, and I just wasn't very physically, athletically inclined. And drawing was just an amazing refuge for me. And so I used to spend all day long filling up these sketchbooks, making these kind of imaginary worlds and characters and things. And it was, I think as you grow up, you start, once you kind of start, as your consciousness develops, I think we're always consciously or subconsciously kind of trying to find our role in the tribe and the community. And really early on, I became kind of the kid that, I went to Sacred Heart Elementary, and I just became the kid that drew. It's like I was last picked on the kickball field, but as soon as someone needed a partner up for a book cover, I was the first one they went to, so you kind of learn you can not get beat up and make friends and influence. It was popular among the young ladies, and I was like, this is the ticket, I mean, there's a lot of really high idealized ways we can look at art, if you look at Yeats, or there's a lot of beautiful poetic prose on the divine nature of art, and sometimes you can just really break it down to one of my favorite authors is Jeffrey Miller, and he is an evolutionary biologist. And from his standpoint, 90% of almost all of our actions are basically a form of signaling to the opposite sex. And you can almost look at art and music, everything as this very involved, love song, mating dance ritual. I think somewhere in high school I realized I could probably pick up more girls drawing than I could throwing a football or playing a guitar. So that's the very kind of romantic but non-romantic, I think one of the reasons I kind of got into this too, which was all great, but I'm just trying to be as honest as possible. It flowered into something much more esoteric later, but if I'm going to be really honest with you guys. So we're going to fast forward here. This is 86. We're going to fast forward to, I think, about the year 2000. So I continued to draw all through high school. The goal I had as an artist was always shifting. There was a time where I really wanted to be a comic book artist. There's a time I got really into sci-fi and horror movies, and I wanted to be a special effects artist, and the hat that I wanted to aim towards was always kind of shifting and changing, but I knew that it always involved drawing. And there's this point that I think it's often overlooked. When you're drawing as a child, it's such a pure form of expression, whether it's a love language, whether you're trying to impress people. It's this thing that comes very naturally to us. And if it's incubated and it's supported, it'll flourish. And what I think is kind of not really spoken about is that there becomes this point where you have this beautiful natural thing that you're developing, and as you go through and you realize that we live on one of these planets where you have to kind of pay to live, you realize that at some point you have to commodify this beautiful gift of creativity in some way. And so when I went to art school, that became really clear. I went to a computer animation school in Sarasota, Florida, and it was a blast. It was a really fun time, and at the end, you kind of get stuck with this $100,000 student loan at the end, and you realize, wow, I got to whore this out for a while to get out of debt. And so when I graduated art school, I wanted to be more of a painter or a fine artist or do galleries or just kind of be crazy, and I saw this huge bill, and so my strategy was how do I make as much money as possible to get out from underneath this and kind of buy my freedom back. So you can see the Flame Lizard transitioned really beautifully into a job in video game design. And my career really started out on Pearl Street. In between Ringling, when I came back here for my summer vacations, I found this really amazing fine art atelier called the Boulder Academy of Fine Arts, and it was taught by a gentleman named L.V. Davis. And L.V. was the quintessential tortured master prodigy. He was taught by the assistant of John Singer Sargent, which is it's pretty cool little prestige to be taught by that guy. And he taught me all of prima painting. He taught me really what's missing in a lot of the modern art schools is this academic lineage of cast drawing and anatomy and figurative, and there's so much amazing knowledge that just gets pushed to the side. Working with Elvie, he really brought that out, and he encouraged a lot of discipline. And so to practice that, I didn't have a lot of money at the time, and I wanted to keep practicing my portraiture, so I would go down to Pearl Street with a bunch of toned charcoal paper, and I started drawing homeless people and runaway kids because they had just nothing but time on their hands all day long. And so they were really great models to draw from. And awesome free models, great practice, made a lot of cool friends. The kids would take the drawings and like give it to their parents to let them know they're okay because they didn't want to get photographs taken of them. So there's a lot of neat little benefits. And after a while, the tourists started coming along and they would want me to draw like their kids. And then they started exchanging little, freedom tokens of money for me. And I thought like, wow, I think this is a good gig. There was a beautiful realization I had one day where it's like, if I just do this, I never have to really wash dishes ever again. I can just support myself and take some paper and some charcoal and make it happen. And I think I'd report this out here for maybe 3 or 4 years, like on the summers I'd come back, and it was a super beautiful time. Parlaying into my next professional art experience was I got an internship at Industrial Light and Magic in San Francisco, and that was a really big deal for me at the time, being a junior in art school. No one from my art school had ever gotten an internship there before, and I got to be like right, kind of in the belly of the beast, working in one of the most amazing group of illusioneers like on the planet, and seeing these things from the inside out, seeing how it worked. And there's kind of this, I think a lot of you, how many people are art students are here because they are looking for a career in art? There's this, we're always kind of, I realized really early on, we're always kind of seeking like that thing, like when's it going to be it? Like what's the peak and what's the pinnacle and how does this feel? We're always kind of chasing this success. And I remember I was at ILM and I was like, okay, this is it. This is the cream of the crop, and I'm here, and wow. And that lasts like 10 minutes, and you're like, okay, what's next after this? The ego is it's insatiable in what it wants to acquire and achieve. So after that internship, it was great, but it was a lot of going through ILM. You'd have to start off as an intern, then a PA, and you were sharpening pencils for years before you were ever doing any real work. So when I graduated art school, I became just a mercenary, and I was selling my services to the highest bidder, and the highest bidder I think I graduated in the year, I picked up my first Wacom in '96 at art school. When I picked up the Wacom, something just really clicked in me. Like I had a background of, like I said, traditional painting. I love charcoal, I love oil paints, I love colored pencil. But when I first got this Wacom, I could just feel that there was just something, literally there was something really electric about it. And it was really raw and really rough and wasn't refined, and the software at that time wasn't anywhere where it is today, but I could just feel like, this is definitely going somewhere, and it's a little awkward and strange. But when I studied the lives of the artists that I really admired, like the Michelangelo and the Leonardo, the Rembrandt, these are all artists that worked with, I saw a movie on the plane today with Turner, and this great shot where he goes into like the paint shop and he's like buying the powdered pigments and negotiating how much cobalt is, and he has to go back and make the paint. But all these great artists used the most sophisticated paintbrushes and camera obscuras and canvases at the time. And I wanted to kind of follow in their footsteps, and I realized that to follow in the footsteps of the masters wasn't to recreate what they did or use the same tools. It was more of the mindset, and their mindset was using technology to expand consciousness and make art. And so I realized that computer animation and Wacom and digital painting, I felt there was going to be, there's growth in that. If we look back at let's just take the last 10,000 years of human creativity, it's dominated by the plant and by the vegetable and animal kingdom as far as our medium. The infinite potential of human creativity is pretty much limited by it's throttled by the bandwidth of using animal pelts and taking papyrus and paper and trees and mashing it down into paper, or pigments or things that kind of come from the earth. So thousands of years we're kind of dependent on the vegetable kingdom and the animal kingdom for creativity. And now the art that I create, one of the little kind of catchy words I've come up with it is electromineralism, because basically I'm harnessing the power of electricity, and these amazing tools that we have. This is, a lot of people sometimes there's some bias about technology. It grows really fast and it can be uncomfortable for people. but this is not a very foreign object. You know, everything about this came from Mother Earth. This is just a combination of minerals. There's magnesium and quartz crystals and silicon and all these amazing things. And so this is basically the combination of minerals and electricity. And so that's where I kind of come up with electromineralism. And I think that now, as consciousness expands, you know, I think technology is kind of, it's this back and forth dance where the tools that are being created, I know that the digital tools I use, they expand my definition of what's possible. You know, I often say that I dream in some of the computer interfaces sometimes. Like this allows my consciousness to go much further. And in this talk today, I'll be showing some slides and I'll be playing some time-lapse videos where you can kind of see the progression. You know, as far as like the bang for the buck out of like creative mileage I get out of this electromineral device compared to a pencil or a piece of graphite is there's no comparison. So. Getting back onto the story here, so I auctioned my wrist off to the highest bidder, and the highest bidder at the time was Nintendo, and I got hired on as their North American, they're North American concept artist in Texas, the studio called Retro Studios, working on this game called Metroid. Are there any, who's a geek that knows what the Metroid franchise was? Growing up, video games were a really huge part of my life. I think I took that for granted a little bit. When I was 11, I had I guess I can call it kind of an accident. I had what they call a venous anomaly, which was like a blood clot in my brain. And I had to, it's a really long story, but I had to have this emergency brain surgery. And it was just it was a massive near-death traumatic experience at kind of age 11 that just shook everything up for me. And a big part of my healing process was I kind of lost faith in the world and trusting the world and trusting my own mortality. And you know, this surgery left me kind of disfigured, and I just didn't want to be around people anymore. But video games, and Metroid especially, was like this safe haven that I could go. I could just explore Zebos and the mazes and battle Kraid, and you know, it totally accepted me. So when I had this opportunity to reimagine a game that really meant a lot for me, that was a pretty fun experience to do. So I worked at Retro for 5 years, and I really wanted to make this game kind of like my opus. You know, really kind of make it a masterpiece. You know, even the design of Samus, I tried to have this sort of figure drawing, like, you know, Venus sort of. I tried to like reference a lot of old master drawings. Here's a picture of me at the time, so to kind of give you some perspective. I had my hair, I had this black mohawk. You can't really see it, but it was actually dyed in the shape of an arrow moving forward. I can go into that in some other talks. But it was, Austin was a hell of a drug, I'll tell you that much, living out there. And so I was just making this, you know, year after year for 5 years. I had this total relationship with this female character, Samus. And at first it was really exciting. There was a lot of prestige and working on this big title. I had lots of freedom, lots of creativity. I was working with Japan, traveling with Seattle. It was a pretty glamorous job. But I was, you know, kind of slowly paying the school back. My mom can attest that I probably wasn't paying it back fast enough, because you start making money and then you want nice cars and you want nice things. And Austin was a very materialistic place. I had a hot rod obsession, and I would date roller girls, and I was fully immersed in like the Austin lifestyle. But at the same time, there was something that I could feel as I kind of got sucked into this really materialistic type of artistic path and career. You know, I put so much time into it, I wasn't really focusing on my own art anymore, and there was kind of part of me that was I felt like kind of like a little bit dying inside, you know, and I really kind of got, I think a lot of artists kind of go through these different sort of existential crises where it's like, why, like, is this, and it was another one of those, like, is this it moment? Like, is this what I'm supposed to do? Like, was I put on this earth? Did I survive this surgery so I could make this mindless entertainment for kids? You know, I kind of saw, I mean, I can justify at the time, I think, I got some benefits out of video games, but when I really look, you start getting in the industry, you go to these E3s, you see how many of these kids aren't playing outside. I couldn't really justify that this was like the highest and best use of my skills. And what was really interesting, one of the things I think is really exciting about art, and I think a lot of artists can understand, a lot of the work I do, at the moment, it feels really intuitive. I use a lot of intuition in the work that I do. Sometimes I don't really question, I just kind of move forward. And you kind of feel that each piece is spontaneous, but when you kind of pull the curtain back and you start looking at it as one larger kind of fourth dimensional paint stroke, you can kind of start seeing these patterns develop. And one of the really, if anyone's familiar with the Metroid Prime series, we worked on 3 games. The first game it's voted one of the most popular arcade Nintendo games that's around. And a lot of my drawings, the designers were heavily influenced by the art that I would make. Kind of the art would come first, and I'd give them these sketches, and they'd start to kind of build stories around them. And I didn't realize this at the time, but looking back, there was the feelings I was having around feeling like not complete, feeling like something was missing, feeling like something was being corrupted, started playing out and mirroring in this video game. And so the next game was called the Metroid Prime. There was this Dark Samus character started to be developed, and Dark Samus was like the Dark Knight of Samus' soul. It was like the anti-Samus was developed. And the third game, it went from Metroid Prime, Metroid Echoes, and then Metroid Corruption. Here's another picture of me, and these slides are a little out of order, but it kind of got to this point, it's a funny thing, but when I started looking at, when you think about, there was a real high I got out of making these characters, because, I knew that these characters that I was designing were going to be going into like the dreams and subconscious of like hundreds of thousands of kids. I'd make these drawings. I dreamed about Kraid and Mother Brain when I was a kid, and it's like you feel this like power. I started like really looking into like what are the most successful monster designs out there. If anyone's familiar with like H.R. Giger, these nightmares that he created. And anyway, kind of long story short, after a while of kind of a combination of getting burnt out, a combination of, feeling, just trying to get some sort of like rise out of this game, it started getting to a point where every boss monster was like, how many testicles and penises can I fit into this monster and still get away with it for Nintendo? Was kind of I'm proud of that. So after 5 years, I had enough. I had started, this is my big fancy lifestyle out in Austin, Texas. And I had developed an online art community called conceptart.org with some college alumni of mine. And it was this really great, we had hundreds of thousands of people that would log onto these forums. And this was kind of at the infancy before concept art became a popular thing. Like even when I was in art school, concept art wasn't anything that there was no commercials to be a concept artist. It wasn't something that was advertised. I went into computer animation because when I went to art school in your freshman year, you kind of have the option to explore different things. And my question was like, where do I make the most amount of money? Like computer animators. I mean, this was 96 to 2000. This is like Jurassic Park just came out. This was like the heyday. We had Silicon graphics machines. They were like $35,000 machines, and you went to school because they gave you access to a $35,000 computer that could run Maya, because nothing could run Maya before that. There were kids that were getting bribed their junior year with Mustangs from like Warner Brothers, like plucking kids out of school. And you're like, this is amazing. I'm going to make so much money. I'm going to be sponsored by, Disney. Like you have all these crazy dreams. And even within those 4 years, like the industry, like a couple shops shut down, and it got totally oversaturated. And I realized that I didn't like really working in hypergraphs and animation and texturing. It just wasn't very comfortable for me. I just wanted to draw. And so what I kind of realized was like, well, look at all these movies. I see all these characters and all these studios. I know there's a lot of animators, there's a lot of texture artists, there's a lot of modelers, but I know there's a dude at this place that just sits down and draws monsters and spaceships all day long. I'm gonna be that dude. I wanna be that guy. But there kind of comes a point where it sounds fun, but when you have to draw monsters and spaceships every day, it does get a little bit derivative. So I was tired of doing that. I was tired of working for the man. All my friends were in similar places at different studios, and we were all tired of working for individual men, and so we decided it'd be great if we all quit our jobs and start our own company together. What could go wrong? A bunch of artists without any business sense starting a multi-million-dollar company? I mean, that sounds like a recipe for success, right? And it was successful at first. They called us kind of the dark prince of the conceptual art and film and video game industry. We were the secret weapon of a majority of the major AAA titles and films that were being produced between 2005 and probably 2010 or so. Big studios would come to us, and we had this beautiful studio in San Francisco, and it was just a huge room full of some of the best concept artists in the world, like 12 of my best friends, and they were all at the top. We were all at the top of each other's game, and a job would come in, and we'd all work on parts of it, and we could design like an entire universe in a week. Where usually these places had one artist that would take them months and months and months to do something. They could bring it to us, we'd flesh out the whole game, and then work on another one. And we also knew what every other game looked like, because all the people were coming to us to make all these games. And I don't remember making a lot of money, but a lot of money came through the studio. We branched out, and we started a studio in Shanghai, an outsourcing studio for at our peak, we probably had 25, 30 people in San Francisco, and we had about the same amount in Shanghai. And it was a multi-million-dollar studio if you looked at like the bills and our burn rate, but there wasn't a lot of, we weren't businessmen. We had no business people on our team. Like our treasurer was one of our friend's girlfriend that quit her job as a waitress to be our treasurer. So lots of years and lots of tears and tax lawsuits and infighting and shares. It was a really long, hard, kind of painful lesson to work. But I'm going to reference, when I call this artists, we make these little individual pieces. Like the individual pieces I make, they're kind of like, if you're on a vacation, this is like my Instagram. They're just little snapshots of these worlds that are being kind of created. And what I like to refer to, or when I'm making a piece, when I zoom out, I really think about what's the fourth dimensional paint stroke. Like if you looked at everything together, if we looked at our whole lives and every interaction, like that fourth dimensional movement through time, I think is really the artist's impact. And what I love about having kind of this perspective in retrospect, I can look back and I can see these bigger narratives. And this was a lot of the art that I was making. This is the personal art I was making at Massive Black. I lost the bet. I wanted the studio to be in Austin, and I lost the bet. They moved to San Francisco. And this is a piece. You can't. The bottom's cut off, but it's the lower downtown. This piece was called Die SF. I really had Austin so dialed in, and I had to leave it because I lost the vote. But these were all the personal pieces that I was making. Given my own devices, like out of all the infinite things that I could paint, like these were the images that were coming out. And part of the reason was that, it was really amazing to work with a lot of your best friends, but the industry and the video game and the film industry, it's unbelievably competitive. It's a what have you done for me lately? Like what have you done for me yesterday? Or what have you done for me today? Any of your past accomplishments mean nothing. You're constantly having to prove yourself. Even our company, it's called Massive Black, and our logo is a rooster, so you guys can put that together in your head, what we were trying to say we're inferencing there. It was a big kind of like pissing contest all the time, and what it bred inside of me was actually a lot of insecurity. I'm working in this, I'm working really late nights, I'm listening to heavy metal music, and it feels like every piece I would have to prove to myself and prove to all the other guys that you're still, at the top of your game. And years of that can really kind of erode, the whole, that beautiful gesture of why you became an artist. I didn't become an artist because I wanted to compete with people. I didn't become an artist because I wanted to, exaggerate my ego. I did it because I just loved it. And I could see when I look back and I see the personal work I've been doing, there's this, just so much of it is this struggle versus good and evil. And unfortunately, I think in a lot of the pieces, the darkness was definitely winning, if I want to be really honest with myself. I did this project. One of the ways that I tried to I think at the time I wanted to prove that I still had a soul while working in the video game industry is I started drawing a self-portrait every day. I started, I think, back in 2003. And at first it was just kind of a cute way of creating new content to post on concept art every day, so we kept getting more likes, and this is before likes, we actually had like registered users. And I just started this thing where I did a portrait every day, because I figured I used to draw portraits in art school, that was fun, no one's buying them, I'm not selling them, I'm always here, I'm never gonna get bored. Well, I do get bored of myself sometimes, but I always have a model, I don't have to pay it anything. And so I did, this small experiment just turned into basically a total obsession, and ended up doing 1,000 self-portraits in 1,000 consecutive days. And this was portrait number 1,000, if that can kind of show you where that journey kind of led. Just super, there were some really beautiful moments that came out of it, but again, there's something that I could feel was really missing in my life and missing in my art. There's a picture of me at the time. I actually just put these photos in today. Usually I don't put photos of myself, but I think it's actually kind of funny to see the different stages that I was in. So this is I was living in San Francisco, just got into Burning Man culture, totally hanging out with the new cool kids, which were these fire dancing, ancient, future, neo-tribal hippies that went to Burning Man and lived in Bali, and I just thought they were just super cool. So this is more work at the time. This is total good versus evil, and good is not always kind of winning. I was telling my girlfriend the other day, it's kind of when you think about spirituality, in most kind of spiritual traditions, you really, it takes effort to pursue the light. It takes effort to pursue the Godhead, but the devil is just waiting all the time. He's just ready to go. You don't have to search him out. He's behind your shoulder every time. And I think there was a lot of that. It didn't seem very clear to me at the time, but all the competition, the intentions, because we weren't trying to make the world a better place. We were just trying to make money and make these video games. And we had such a huge burn rate that we had so many mouths to feed. We didn't have a choice of we want to work. You have some good ethics, we're going to work with you. Or we didn't have the luxury of turning down work, so we were working on first-person shooters. Lots of really toxic video games were coming through, and we were a part of that, and our hand was in that. And so this brings us to about 2006. I had, at this point, I realized that working with your best friends, and as romantic as it sounded, it was really becoming increasingly more and more difficult. That sort of, what have you done for me lately? We all had equal shares in the company, but how does everyone justify if they're working equally as hard? We started the company because we just wanted to sell it. We thought we were going to build this company and sell it for $20 million and just retire boat drinks, down in the Bahamas. But we came to realize it's the only reason this company is valuable is because we're attached to it, and no one's going to buy this company unless we come with it. And then, so that bubble popped, and we realized that there is no golden parachute to this place. And it just became, you add friends and you add a lot of money and a lot of competition, and just not so, we didn't handle it very well. And so I'm working, my relationships are deteriorating. I'm starting to become less and less connected with the friends that I started this studio with, and I'm finding more of a kindred spirit within Burning Man and festival communities and this visionary art sort of scene that, I found that, there's a certain amount of with the work that I do. I consider LSD to be a very powerful art supply, personally. I'll be honest with it. I think it's a gift from God. But that was, that act was something that was really kind of demonized among my coworkers. And I found these festivals in Burning Man and the visionary art community where you were celebrated if you did acid and made a painting. And I was oh, well, I think this isn't so bad, this could work out. And I was dating this really lovely girl at the time. I got to meet John Barlow's daughter. He was a lyricist for the Grateful Dead. And she invited me to this ceremony up in the hills of Sebastopol, and it was an ayahuasca ceremony. And I had listened to a lot of Terrence McKenna. I had heard about this ayahuasca and DMT, and I'm the kind of guy that'll try anything twice. And so I figured, hey, let's give this a shot. And went up, I had dressed in white. There's this amazing Peruvian ayahuasquero. She gives us just the nastiest tasting thing you could ever imagine putting into your body. And about 10 or 11 minutes, she starts getting up and starts whistling and shaking this rattle. And all of a sudden, I just become suffocated by these energetic tendrils that are enveloping me. And this can be more of a longer story for the book, but I went through what I in my mind, I was convinced that I had died at that point, I was dead. And I went through this whole death, what they call in the spiritual tradition, it's like a death trip. And I went through the bardos, I went through the whole life review, I saw the interactions I was having, I saw the consequences of my actions, I saw what working at this studio was doing and the unhealthy relationships. And this medicine, which is a medicine, it gets to this point where it supposedly kind of goes into your body and attaches the toxins, and you purge it out. You have this very violent projectile vomiting that is part of the medicine getting out of your system. And so this piece was called The Purge. This was kind of the energetic expression of what was happening to me in this ceremony. And they also say that there's a feminine spirit that's associated, the spirit of this vine, this chicurta vine that grows in the Amazon. And that was just a major kind of, there was a fork in the road. And it wasn't so much a fork in the road, it was another path went and the old path dissolved. And I knew I couldn't go back there. And so I was kind of forced to make a big decision. I didn't know what to do. And I made this piece. It was a personal piece at the time. There was this magazine, this book called Spectrum, which is kind of the who's who of sci-fi and fantasy illustration. I submitted this piece into Spectrum to be inside of the book, and they ended up choosing it for its cover, which was, at the time, for where I was, that would be the equivalent of winning a Grammy for a concept artist to get on the cover of this magazine. And that was kind of the motivation I needed, oh wow, this is the thing, I can be doing this. And that just started a whole new path. This was started as a pencil drawing. It's called Aya Struck. I would then do deeper journeys into the Amazon, fasting for weeks at a time and drinking ayahuasca every other day. And just really, nature just moves through you in pretty amazing ways. So this was a big part of what I was doing. This is Burning Man. Burning Man became another one of the biggest, I think, as far as life-changing new cultural directions. Burning Man, I'd like to think that it didn't have as much influence on me, but if I'm honest, it really did change the way that I interacted with reality. Because at the same time, Burning Man is an opportunity where it's a creative triathlon for me. I'd go out there and I could bring artwork, I could make artwork. I was body painting on people. I would fall over at night because I was so exhausted because I was making art all day long, and it was just a really amazing experience. And at about the same time that I quit Massive Black, I didn't really have any other options, and I also had to sign a non-compete that said I wouldn't work on video games or any illustration anymore. So the whole revenue stream that I had developed all my skills for wasn't even really available to me. And there was this DJ that I was friends with at the time named Lauren, and he goes by Bass Nectar now. And he invited me on this West Coast tour. And he's like, Andrew, I love you. I did an album cover for him. He's like, just come get on the bus and come on tour and let's just hang out for a while. And I know that I need something more than just hanging out. So I had this idea. I'm like, well, you do these shows, and at the shows there's usually a projector and a screen behind you. He's like, yeah. I'm like, what if I had been doing workshops, I had been doing painting in front of people. I'm like, what if I thought it was such an amazing idea that I could make a piece of art while he's playing his set, and I thought he'd be really impressed with this idea. And he's like, yeah, whatever, just get on the bus. I don't care what you do. And so I was so excited. I just needed to change. I did one show one time in Sebastopol, And I remember I wanted to make it, I didn't want to be on stage like sitting at a desk, so this is the tool, my little mineral tool that I make most of my artwork with. This is an oversized and 204 Wacom tablet, and I put these C-clamps on it, and I put a guitar strap on it, and I would wear it on stage like a guitar, and it was so, at the beginning I was so nervous. It was like, oh my God, like what am I doing? Like who is this weirdo that's getting on stage with this big rectangle and moving his hand up and down and looking, straining his neck to look back at the screen. But I remember there was like a moment where I was making something, because you're really super vulnerable up there too, like there's no undo, there's no net, if you mess up, if things crash, you're working on the spot. But I remember the first show, there was this moment where people kind of like, what the heck are you doing? And there was a moment where they would see, I was like making these like little shading lines, and they could see, they made the connection between me doing this and it showing up on the screen. And I just remember these guys gave me this thumbs up one time, and that was it. I was like, oh yeah, I got 2 thumbs up. Time for a whole new career. And yeah, it started a completely new path for me. And it was really revolutionary for me because you saw all that work before, like the color palette of the work I was doing in San Francisco. It was grays and these earth tones and all this like pain and darks and very oppressive, really heavy work. Because I was like I said, I was listening to heavy metal music. I was like alone. I was in a room with other guys, and set and setting it's an incredibly potent combination. So instead of being, in a little man cave, listening to angry music, I was now like on stages with hundreds and thousands of people in the audience. And instead of harnessing like the insecurity of proving myself, I was harnessing just the enthusiasm and the exuberance of just hundreds and thousands of people like dancing and having these peak experiences. And it was such a new and powerful form of inspiration to harness. And that's what really, when you're on stage, it's like you can become kind of this channel for this energy to come in. I learned that when I was drawing portraits. I could feel, the energy when I mixed. Sometimes there'd be crowds behind me, and it's like, okay, I could either get really nervous that all these people are watching me draw, and I could go into my fear and think that they're judging me, or I'm going to make a mistake, or they think that I'm really crappy, or I can just pretend that they think I'm great and harness their like excitement and their enthusiasm, and that's what would happen on stage. I could literally almost use people's energy like as an energetic food source to fuel this art. This is a piece called Fractal Sunrise, and I would do these just these creative just binges. I would start at sunset on a stage, and I was very low profile. All I needed was like a 4x4 footprint with my little Wacom and a tripod and my laptop. And they would just plug me in a projector, and I would go from sundown to sunup sometimes, like all the way through. I'd pee off the side of the stage, and I'd come back. But there was this one moment where I went this is in Canada, this was in Shambhala. I'm kidding, I went to the porta potty, I didn't pee off the stage. So amateur. So I had been going all through the night, and this was Lauren, DJ Bass Nectar. He used to play these unbelievable sunrise sets, and I'm here outside in this beautiful national park in the Canadian Rockies with just thousands of people alongside this beautiful river, and the sun's coming up, and I'm outside and I'm painting, and I'm painting the sun as it's rising over the hills, and I just realized I've never done this before. I'd never even thought about taking a laptop outside and to really have that observation of the beautiful molecular density of three-dimensional nature, instead of looking at a National Geographic photo, you're actually living, you're the living, breathing experience of creativity and action. And yeah, it was so thrilling. This is another shot of, this was Bass Nectar playing at a concert in Chicago. This is a 4-hour, just knuckle grinding session that he played that was really amazing. There's this, I can't point at my screen, you can see it, but there's this little, if you see the blue on the right of the screen, there was this guy in a wheelchair, and this guy was dancing for like 4 hours in the wheelchair. And that's why Lauren usually plays like a 1-hour set, but like after we played this set, everyone was sweating and almost dying. And he dedicated the whole set because this guy in the wheelchair just would not stop dancing. And things like that happen, you can never plan. And what's kind of started off as just a tour up the West Coast, once I started making this work and sharing it, and I think I was using MySpace, we're using tribe.com was really big at the time. I post these on Tribe, posted on my website, and more opportunities started coming in. For the first year, I wasn't getting paid for any of these things because I was trying to establish live digital painting as a thing. And you get paid when you create a certain amount of value in someone else's imagination, and that's what people pay for. If people don't know what you're doing, it's really hard to extract any premeditated value out of them. So I spent a year working on album covers on the side and kind of funding a tour where I figured if I can go to one of these festivals and make work and look like the weirdo on the edge of the stage, but I get to show them these beautiful pieces that I made at their festival. This is one called Serpent Sunset. This is out in Australia. And it didn't take very long before I was doing this work and putting it out there that I just started getting invitations to go all over different places, all over the world. And just, this little laptop and this Wacom have taken me to so many different countries and continents. And, I love traveling, but I love traveling with a purpose. It's hard for me to just kind of be a sightseer. I feel like I'm just a taker. Even when I went out to when I was in Copenhagen, I was just there for a detox and massages, and I just feel like such a colonialist, doing that. I don't know. I need to be giving something, and the beauty of traveling when someone invites you somewhere is just unparalleled. Like going to Russia and having a crew pick you up from the airport and show you all the special places immediately. And it was just, not only was it an amazing experience to go to these different places and make this art, but it was just so beautiful to experience the nectar of all these different little subcultures all over the world. All these different communities had different, there were different faces and different names, but a lot of the same archetypal characters you'd kind of see over and over and over again. And it was just really special to be invited into such intimate spaces and see the best of what they had to offer. And I made so many just amazing, long-lasting relationships through all these people. This is, do you remember what year this is? This one is, Mom? So one of the things I started doing for my mom, I need to make a slideshow of this, what year did I start? 5 or 6. Part of my love language is I make a Christmas card for my mom every year. And this was what? My mom's birthday is Christmas too, so it was like a 2-for-1 deal for me. And so I make her this Christmas card every year. So this is one of my favorite Christmas cards I made several years back. Okay, I think, what do we have right here? This is a piece called Wildlife. I had this one opportunity, and just weird things come. I get the weirdest emails. I had the internet. I can't imagine what it must have been like to make art or make connections, before we had access to the super highway of information. But one of the invitations I had was to teach a series of workshops through China. And I taught in Beijing, Shanghai, and Guangzhou. And I got to meet these amazing printers. I got taken deep inside the inner sanctum of the Forbidden City and got tours of digital printing studios inside the Forbidden Cities of families that have been printing on silk for decades and decades and generations. And they asked me to make a poster. They wanted to bring awareness to all the different animals in China that were becoming extinct. And so the idea I had was to take all these different animals and make it this organic headdress of this beautiful girl, so people could kind of feel the connection that we are to animals. And just through a lot of, you'll see a lot of these pieces I do, I stick to this very formulaic, low-hanging fruit of the forward-facing female. And the reason behind that is really that actually, I learned about the marketing actually after this, but I mean, there's no accident that when you look at your grocery store, that all these magazines have beautiful faces looking at you. Like there's a certain part of our brain that's just designated for remembering faces, and there's something about like a female face looking directly at you that just captures your attention. And so, in a lot of these pieces, I use the face as basically like that hook to get you in. And hopefully if I can kind of get someone in, then they can start exploring the painting and find some of the deeper meanings in it. So this is a time lapse, and one of the beautiful things about this medium is I'm able to directly record my screen and share the process with people. So I'll just step you guys through this. So the initial probably 10 or 20 minutes, this is really relying all upon my figure drawing experience. This is all different academic techniques I learned, kind of working from loose to rough. All the strokes I'm keeping my anatomy in mind, and I'm just slowly like bringing this figure, this face into focus. And for me, I find that process is probably one of the most valuable things that you can develop. Your art's, the product of the art is always going to change. And whether you're making art for commercial purposes or you're doing it for yourself, sometimes you're not always in charge of what the final product is. But the thing is, the process is always yours. You can always own the process. And this process that I use, I've been calling it pareidolia, but it's really a dance between form and chaos. I get to a point, like you think, I started this face, it starts off very rough, and once I establish a certain amount of like form and structure, and there's a face there, then I go into like very chaotic, intuitive type of paint strokes. I've leveraged the software I use. I use a software called Corel Painter. The reason I like this software so much is because it really lends itself to what the artists call like the happy accidents. Photoshop kind of gives you exactly what you want, but Painter doesn't always give you exactly what you want. That's something I really love about that. And for me, my imagination isn't really, it's not a very visual imagination. I can't say they don't have any visual imagination, but I don't get hit with like lightning strikes of like a finished image, and then I don't just toil to try to create that. I don't really have that at all. I get hit with kind of intuitive emotions and feelings and ideas I want to pursue. But the creative part is really done within the process. So this definition, this word called pareidolia, it's a term to describe the psychological condition of, when you look up at clouds and you see, the mind is very uncomfortable with chaos. We really don't like chaos at all. And so we're always, and ever since like Adam and Eve, where we just love like naming things and making them less chaotic. So when you look up at the clouds and you see these shapes, all of a sudden that's a giraffe, or that's a dragon, or that's a tiger, or that's that. That's pareidolia. It's basically your mind not being comfortable with chaos and having to make something objective out of that. And part of my process, and that's your neocortex, the neocortex aspect of the brain, your shape recognition. Human beings have unbelievable, unparalleled shape recognition technology that's evolved for thousands and thousands of years. And in my work, I really leverage that. I have moments where I will work for sometimes 5 minutes, a half an hour, several hours, working in a completely subjective mode. I do everything I can to not make it look like anything. And then once I get that complete, I might take a break, get something to eat, come back at it, and then I kind of turn on my objective lens, my objective like mind frame, and then I see all the faces and animals and things, and then I work to bring those out. And then once I get tired of that, then I go back into chaos. And so these images, a lot of them are like order and chaos, just leveraged and layered back and forth and back and forth. And the reason I get so much out of this process is because, like I said, because I don't have an image that I'm attached to. It's kind of like if you read like the Bhagavad Gita. One of the main lessons in the Gita is to totally disassociate yourself from like the fruits in your actions. Like the true meaning of yoga. Yoga is to be in the moment of the process. It's to have no expectation of what you're doing in the end. And if you have this final product you're trying to achieve, you're not really in the moment of making it. But this process really allows me to kind of be in that yoga where the excitement for me isn't pursuing this like high idealized vision that I have, but the motivation for me creating this piece is that I want to see what it looks like when it's finished, you know? Like that's like the thrill. And what's kind of beautiful about it is that I end up at destinations that I don't think I ever could have sat down and came up with, because the creativity, it kind of compounds on itself. It's not just having one blast and then being married to executing that blast. It's having these little moments of breakthrough, and you kind of step here and here and here, and then when you get to this vista, you're like, oh wow, and then I can do this. And then you kind of build upon that, and that opens up something else. It's a beautiful process, you know, and there's times where I feel there's a lot of works where, you know, the most important thing I can do is really kind of get out of the way. You know, they say that sometimes, and I didn't really get it when I was in school, you know, and this, you know, I think Michelangelo talked about doing a sculpture was to remove everything that wasn't the sculpture. Like the sculpture existed in the marble, and the artist's job was to get everything out that wasn't that sculpture. This is a sculpture. So this piece was then modeled by these amazing Chinese artists, and this was 3D printed out in China, which was pretty cool. You know, it's kind of amazing to see the, you know, because you saw the whole process it's so loose, it's so suggestive, these little lines and little strokes that I'm making, and to see someone else's imagination take over and really flesh it out. And then this is one of those high points in your career, when you have a piece of your art that's printed on a fine piece of china. You know you really made it, you know, and you can rest your hat on that. And this is a project that never fully launched, but it's called Jake the Dreaming. It's these illustrations for a children's graphic narrative book.
Will you finish that project?
I don't know. I got in a big fight with the art director. You have to edit that piece out if this goes online. That's the thing. I think I could be. I was like, I mean, really, where I am in my career too. It's like, you know, when people ask like, what's success? I mean, there's a million different definitions for success, but for me, success is the ability to, you know, I feel that the best art director I can have is really my own heart. You know, because whenever I'm working for people, and I do love, I think there's a seva, which kind of means selfless service, and it's beautiful to be able to help to bring people's visions to life. I don't want to underestimate how important that is, and what an amazing service that can be to people, to take their ideas and flesh them out. Like, man, I don't think I've had a lot of people ever take my ideas and put them into art, but I can just imagine how exciting it is, because I do it for people all the time. And there's something it's great about that. There's definitely a value to like the collaboration within that. But I find that, you know, more and more, the art that I do, it's so intuitive. You know, I don't start off with sketches. I have a hard time when people work. They're like, "Oh, I want to see some thumbnails," and it's just like, "Well, you're going to want to hire somebody else, because I'm not going to give you a thumbnail. You know, it's going to come out like this." And even when I do that, even when they're like, "Okay, Andrew, just do whatever you want. We're just going to pay you a bunch of money for it at the end, and we're not going to tell you to change it at all." You know, even if that's the way it goes, and it goes that way maybe 1% of the time. Still, there's this part of me that I'm bargaining with my imagination of them. You know, I make something and I think, oh, are they going to like this or not? Or maybe it's too far out, or maybe I'm going for the low-hanging fruit, and it's like this melodrama happens inside of my imagination that's just it's a waste of energy. So for me, the success that I've achieved is the ability to just not having to do that anymore, you know, not having to be art directed. You know, and I think when you create a body of work that kind of stands on its own, and it's really important that as students, when you're building your portfolio, you know, really only put the work in it that is the work that you want to be doing, whether you would get paid or not. Because if you start putting things in that you know are commercially successful but make you miserable, you know, that's just asking the universe for like, oh, please give me more of this misery, please. You know, I'm super good at it, but I hate it. So it's really important to just put the things in that you really like doing. This is a piece called Power to the Pyramid. I made this in 2011. I think, so there's a certain point, you know, now that I'm not working for the film industry or the entertainment industry, I'm working for musicians, I'm working at festivals, and I have a lot more time on my hands, and I'm way more in control of my schedule. 2011, I started to kind of get more involved in, how can art be used as like a political tool? How can it be something that makes a message and a statement? There's this really amazing book that I recommend everyone read. I haven't finished it all the way, but it's called Reclaiming Art. It's Art in the Age of Artifice. Got published recently. It's published by Evolver Editions, and the author is J.F. Martel. And you can see how much I like this book already. What's nice about it, it's just a huge collection of just incredible quotes. These are mostly all quotes that the author is kind of aggregating. But he puts forth this really amazing argument. It's this argument between art and artifice. And it's a whole kind of lecture in itself. But the argument that Mr. Martel makes is that the majority of what we call art out there in the world, there's kind of like the high art, like the capital art, which is art that comes from the soul, art that's like the purest expression of like the divine imagination of consciousness. It's the kind of work that you see and it makes you want to like stand up straighter and be like proud to be a human being, like the real art. It's like if I had to be a stand for the human race in front of like the Galactic Federation Council, and humanity was up for debate whether they were going to let us keep moving forward. It's like I would want to be a stand for what we're capable of, and if I had to produce some type of evidence that justified the atrocities that we've committed and just the ignorance and the pain and the suffering, I would put up on that stand, like Mozart's Requiem. It's like, yeah, we had the Holocaust, but like, we made this. Like, we made the Requiem. Like, this is unbelievably amazing. That's the high art that can be that. And what Mr. Martel makes the argument for is the majority of art, that what we call art isn't really art at all. It's what we call artifice. And he says that mainly consists of if art doesn't elicit if there's not a higher reason for it, if there's not a higher dimension, if it's not something that's empowering or changing or evolving or something we can be proud of, then it basically falls in the categories of propaganda or pornography. And he makes a pretty good argument. I'll use his words that in the high 90% of the art that we're exposed to is more or less pornography and propaganda. And I am just as guilty. There's many images that I've created that I could look back and say, that could be New Age propaganda, or that could be kind of spiritual pornography. And so this is a great book. It's made me totally rethink this whole, and you kind of go, and it's like I was in Cambodia, and I was like going through the stores, and they have these huge bazaars and all these like paintings, thousands of paintings of the different temples and the Buddhas. And in the past it's like, oh, this is the art market, this is the art bazaar. But you look at it and like, these are just thousands of just soulless paintings that are just pumped out in factories of like Angkor Wat at sunset over and over and over again. That's basically tourist pornography. There's no real spiritual value to any of this at all. And I don't want to pick on like a third world nation, but the majority of the stuff that we see, it really does borderline on a type of pornography or propaganda. And anyway, it's an amazing book. If you're kind of developing your style and where you're going, you just want to get a new lens on how to make some more discernment, it's an incredible read. And so this would be an example of, there's a certain amount of propaganda to this, I guess, but this was during the Egyptian Revolution, and I don't know what I just was glued to like Al Jazeera as this was going on. I was in my studio and just watching just the conflict of like culture and power and these people that were making this stand. And at the time I had my studio out in Berkeley in Emeryville, and I felt so far away, and I just wanted these people to know how much love I had for what they were doing and how much support. I just wanted them to know that there's this dude that's way over here that's totally disconnected, that sees them for what they're doing. And so I put everything I was doing on the back burner, and I just made this huge piece that kind of embodied like the spirit and the conflict of this revolution they were going through. And then I ended up getting through the internet. That piece got into Egypt, and I started printing it, and it went on to zines, and I just really learned like, wow, art can really do some really when we're not just whoring it out all the time, and it's got such a huge potential. I think the potential is often really lost. You know, if I try to think of like real art, like Banksy. Like Banksy's like I consider this guy to be a real like art with the capital A. You know, like any guy that like goes into the tunnels of Gaza and like paints on the side. And like one of the reasons like there's so much debate around Banksy, like, oh, is it art? Is it not art? The reason, my theory is the reason that people are so confronted and have such a hard time acknowledging him as an artist is because they're so conditioned to art being propaganda or pornography that when they see real art, they don't even know what to do with it. It doesn't fit in the box that they've been conditioned to. So, going back 2011, I had this crazy idea. So I've been working with the software I use called Painter. I had developed a really nice relationship with them over the years. One, because it just wasn't a very popular program, and I just used the heck out of it, and I became kind of their poster boy. I would help them. They would use me for beta testing. I would go to their studios in Canada. I'd brainstorm on like new brushes for them to make, and we had a really great back and forth collaboration. And they came out with this new version of Painter, and they wanted to do a bunch of promotional work. And so I had this idea. I was like, listen, why don't you pay me a undisclosed sum of money, and I'm going to buy a big. This truck was a service vehicle at a nuclear missile silo in Kansas, and I bought it for like maybe $6,000 from I think like Palm Desert. I was like, I'm going to get this truck and we're going to wrap it with graphics, and I'm going to set up like solar panels and a projector on top, and make a little mobile studio, and I'm just going to go up the coast and just make paintings everywhere I go and give out copies of Painter, and you're going to pay me this much money to do it. And they totally bought it. And we called it the Night Rainbow Tour because the truck was called the Night Rainbow. I can't say that there was ever a Night Rainbow Part 2 tour, but Part 1 was amazing. And one of the reasons I did this because I'm traveling all over the place, and I'm a creature of comfort. I'll admit it. And it you know, at the beginning it was really exciting, like setting up at the edge of stages and the back of the sound booths and making art. But as you get a little bit more older, you start realizing how important it is to kind of have your zone the way that you want it, you know. And it's just I didn't like working in hotels. You have to get used to the chair, and so the reason I came up with the idea of this tour is because I left Massive Black with like the shirt on my back, you know, and tons of tax debt. Go figure. I ended up like losing more money, that company. But the one thing I got out of it was this really badass Herman Miller chair, and that's one of the secrets to my success: get a really nice chair. And the reason, I think one of the main motivations for creating this vehicle and doing this tour, the whole tour and the whole vehicle is actually just built around the experience of taking my Herman Miller chair up and down the coast, because I just wanted to work in my chair, you know? It's a really good chair. So, but what I ended up doing, and I know it's hard to see on this piece, if you go to a website called rainbowdroid.com, you can see this, it's more interactive, but what I did is I went to all these different music festivals from Southern California all the way to Canada and back down. And everywhere I went, I'd park the van in somewhere like close to a main stage and obnoxious enough to like be obtrusive for everyone else around it. And I would set up little galleries outside, and I would just be in my little lair in my Herman Miller chair, and I would just make art during the whole festival. And pointing at my monitor like you guys can see. And so every time I set up in a new location, I just added more pixels to the right side of the canvas. And so it basically became this one long, continuous kind of stream of consciousness painting. So this one was at a festival called Harmony Festival. I had a friend of mine that I was like sitting there, and it was just so great because I just sit at the edge of my truck and people would come and see me and give me stories. And my friend Zavi is like, Andrew, I had this crazy dream where I was meditating and these dragons came over the horizon and they both came at me, and the only thing I had to do was, the only way I could stop them from eating me was to like meditate and hold my space. And I was like, oh, cool. I'll just paint that right now on the side of a 30-foot dome, and you know, that's what we did. The tour is actually sponsored. It was written off by Corel Painter, and Amazon was one of the sponsors too. So the last piece was this big. It was a piece we did for the Amazon studios, and anyone that knows me knows that I have a slight addiction to Amazon.com. And so I try to what's the best part about Amazon? Always to be able to, you can just manifest what you want. So this piece is called Manifesta, and the whole landscape is made up of all the little Amazon boxes. This is another piece. This was a mural that we had up outside the Made Studios, which was really exciting. Another cool advantage of digital art is like I make this on my laptop, and through technology, I mean, you can just put this stuff anywhere. It's super exciting. This is one of the pieces I made. This is a piece that I made on the tour. And so I think I was in, this is a piece I was in Canada. They just hooked me up in front of the projector, and I pretty much go with whatever music is playing at the time. The first strokes are really always, I just want to, like a lot of my motivation is, I want to, so as a visual artist and someone that works basically in 2 dimensions, it really just all comes down to shapes. You're just manipulating shapes. And this is something I learned in college. I had this, for a while I had this fascination. I really wanted to be like a photorealistic painter. I wanted to make things as realistic as possible. I would like draw my hand every night. I would dissect cadavers at the Miami University. I wanted to just know everything and make things as accurate as possible. But from dissecting cadavers, I started realizing that like the molecular density of reality is so intricate and so complicated, it's absolutely impossible to ever reproduce it at all. You can never really draw a hand. You can only really draw a certain assemblage of abstract shapes that another human being's neocortex interprets as a hand if you draw it close enough to that. And it was kind of depressing to realize that, but it was within that depression, it was incredibly liberating to realize that like, wow, all I have to do is make a certain amount of shapes, and if I'm successful, I put the right shapes against the other right shapes and colors. The neocortex and someone else's imagination does all the real heavy lifting of making this a real thing. I mean, art is like, Picasso said, art is a lie that tells the truth. Every piece, it's like, I'm just kind of an illusionist that puts these things together, and it's really everyone else's imagination that really brings this stuff to life. So the tour was great, but everything comes to an end, and the Night Rainbow came to quite a fiery end, unfortunately. I blew out a heat sensor in Kansas. This photo is totally staged, actually. It's a smoke bomb. And I don't tell Facebook that, I just tell you guys that. But we replaced the Night Rainbow with the Midnight Sun once I moved to Colorado, because like the Night Rainbow is like, this is a 4x4. I think the guy that advertised on this Craigslist, I think the keywords was like zombie-proof vehicle is what kind of like piqued my curiosity. This thing was like, all the vehicles have to have some sort of stupid, crazy story. This was a survey vehicle for the Arctic Circle, and the back is reinforced it's like 3 inches of insulation to survive blizzards, and it's got a 5K of man stuff, macho stuff, 4x4. Anyway, so, man. So this is another, we're kind of going off in different directions. One of the things I want to get across into what I do, it's like, I think the beautiful thing about being a creative person is just the fact to apply that creativity to every aspect. It's not, I mean, there's a certain amount of creativity that you can express on a piece of canvas or in a file or in an image or on a video, but I think the real creativity is like being creative. Like if you look at life as the medium of your creativity, not just the canvas, the pencil, but a lot of what I've focused on is really the idea of like how, I don't ever want to get too locked into one certain thing. A lot of my journey has been, where can I add like the most amount of value into other people's life? What are the different ways that I can apply creativity to create value for massive amounts of people? And I've always just really been interested in exploring how to get the most out of that. And I think in 2010, I had this opportunity. There was this festival in Portugal that I had done live painting at for several years. And they invited me like, hey, Andrew, we love your work, we love your vision. We want you to design the main stage for our massive trance dance temple that fits like 25,000 people. And I had, it was something that if I was a reasonable person, I would have been really honest and told them that I was completely underqualified to take on such a project, but I didn't. And I think that's a great piece of advice, like if someone asks you to do something really unreasonable, just say that you can. Just go for it, because you're not going to find out that you can't do it unless you fail. Don't guess that you're going to fail. If you're going to fail, fail and do it. Otherwise, you might not totally fail. So I totally lied to these guys and said, oh yeah, this will be a piece of cake. I'll totally design a massive three-dimensional structure because I'm so good at pushing pixels around. But to a certain degree, when I was at ILM, my mentor Ian McCaig, one of his sayings was like, before it's on the stage, it's on the page. And everything does start off with a drawing. And I realized through my conceptual work, that's really where things start really happening. And the beauty of this sort of work is that, the imagination, our human imagination is arguably one of the most powerful of all of our natural resources. The ability for us to actually take concepts and explore them in different dimensions inside of our mind is just drives me crazy that that's actually a thing. You guys are all thinking things and I can't see what's in your mind. And you can never see what's in my mind, ever. Not really what's ever in there. It's this total mystery, but we explore it together. But what's in someone else's mind, and if you can get something into someone's imagination, really powerful things happen. So we started it with a page, started with a drawing. I'm like, well, if I was a DJ, I'd probably want to be DJing in a massive stellated dodecahedron with lasers coming off of it. Obviously, what else would you want to DJ out of? A rhombus? No way, Octagon? Gotta be the stellated dodecahedron. So we built it out of cardboard. Then I hired a guy that was way better at cutting metal than I was and paid him just barely enough that he would agree to do it. And so, because there's not a lot of big budgets on these projects, he built it out in Berkeley. And then this is kind of cheating. Once it was built, then I drew the whole thing over again. So this is an actual drawing of it after it's already constructed. And here is some videos, some photos of it being in actual 3 dimensions. And we had all these awesome projectors on it. We had all the faces of it were LEDs that were synced live with the music. So this thing would actually vibrate and animate to the direct music, like the source, a source feed from the DJ. So this thing would actually move in conjunction with colors and shapes to their music. And yeah, it was really cool. These are some of the concept designs that I did for it. But the project was, when you're doing the drawings, thousands of miles away, it's super low pressure. You're like, oh, here's some more drawings. Oh, I'm going to meet with you guys on Skype. The reality of this project was going out into the middle on the dry lake bed in Portugal, and you've got this thing, your canvas is the size of an empty football field, and they're like, okay, now you're going to do this. Now you're going to really build it. Working with a whole group of really ornery, angry Portuguese guys that don't know who this silly little American is that's telling them to do everything. But I did have this really cool moment where I built it all in 3D because I realized I was having a really hard time getting people behind me because I had no precedent. I had nothing. I couldn't say, hey, look at this other thing I've built. Trust me. Nothing gave them any confidence that I knew what I was doing. And the turning point was I built it all in 3D in Maya. I had everything where I wanted it to be. And I took the most influential members of the team when there was nothing there, and I took them into the middle of the field, and then I got my laptop out, and I centered the camera to where we would be at the center of the field, and I oriented the camera to kind of give them it's super I don't know, it's low rent, augmented reality, but I could move the laptop in a way that wherever they looked inside the frame of the laptop was like a portal into the future of what it was going to look like as I moved it around. And as soon as I did that, it was just okay, this guy's not a total idiot, Maybe we'll listen to what he says for a little while. I'm trying to think, is this bad soundtrack, but this is what it ended up kind of look. This is from the backstage out, and then this is the psytrance is not very popular in this country. I think it's very popular throughout the universe, and it's incredibly popular in Europe. And to these people, the trance dance floor it's like their church. They take it really, really, really seriously. And it's pretty serious. I mean, it's the only place that I've ever, we talk about world peace in this very abstract context because it's something that we've never had any evidence for, but at these dance floors, I mean, you've got Palestinians, you've got Israelis, you've got Indians, you've got Germans, you've got people from, it's the only place I've ever seen people that represent every single different culture around the planet dancing in like love, joy, and unity together. I don't know any example of where that happens anywhere else on this planet, so there's something cool to be said for that. So I probably put a lot of slides in here, so I'm going to go through some of these a little faster to leave some questions at the end. This is the Burning Man ticket. I got asked to do the ticket in 2000. You don't really get asked to do the ticket. You get asked to compete with a bunch of other artists every year to do the ticket for Burning Man. And this has happened to be the year that I actually won, and 2011. But it was this is a huge feather in my hat to like do the ticket for this event that meant so much to me. And again, it was working with the art direction of Larry Harvey was let's be another story for another time. And so then as I get more involved in these festivals, I'm like, wow, I see all these people that are really incredible at like working in the sun all day long with tools and building things and lifting heavy things and cutting bamboo and sweating. And I'm like, that's really awesome. That's really cool. I think I'd rather just sit in an air-conditioned container and make drawings of the things that you're going to build in the sun. Yeah, I think I'll do that one. Yeah, so that's what I do. So I just kind of design things. Boom gave me this huge, as grueling and there were times where building this dance temple was one of the most stressful things ever. I would wake up every morning and I was sleeping in a shipping container, and I'd wake up every morning in this like cold sweat of all the things that had to get done, because if the dance temple didn't happen, it was my fault. And it was like I ruined church for 60,000 trancers, and it was all my fault. It would eat me alive. So that was incredibly stressful. But once it was all done, it was unbelievable to see what I knew were just crazy, unreasonable drawings in 3 dimensions all around me. And so it gave me kind of a new boost of like, wow, like making art on a canvas is really cool, but what if I can zoom out, and what if the canvas, instead of using paints and colors and brushes, what if my paints are people, and my paintbrushes are like teams and crews from all around the world? And so that's where I decided, I think the ultimate expression of what I can do within my means and my knowledge base is to create a massive camp at Burning Man Festival. That seems like the most unreasonable, ridiculous thing. And so this is how the camp started. It started as an abstract drawing. This is my bird's eye above view, and I wanted to call it Bam Boom Lab, because there's a crew called the Bamboo DNA, and then Boom Festival and the Do Lab, and they were the best at what they did. And I'm like, ooh, I bet I could get them all to work on this if I put their name in the title of it. So I called it Bamboo Lab, and I was like, okay, so now this is going to be a dome, this is going to be a tea house, and these are the showers. And it just started developing, okay, this is where all the little cars are going to be, and these are all the tents, and this is the chill out, and this is the gear, and this is production, and this is stage, and this is our TED stage, and this is where people are going to park their bicycles. And it barely resembled this in the end, but it's that field of dreams thing. It's like you make something unreasonable, and this is something that ended up taking the hearts and minds of hundreds of people working for no money to create this thing, and it was just all off of like a crazy drawing. It's just I'm constantly like blown away on how powerful a single image can be when you can combine it with the right people that believe in it. Because the trick is, it's only pixels. It's just shapes and images until you make it alive in someone's imagination. When it becomes alive in someone's imagination, then it becomes a real thing. And these are some shots of the camp that we made. We had it from 2011, 12, and 13. We had this camp, and it was, for whatever it's worth, in 2013, this was I think it's still, I'm biased, but I think it was the coolest camp Burning Man had ever seen. They were calling it the Burning Man main stage, which is pretty exciting. I mean, we had 500 people camp together in one camp. That's just the camp, and it would entertain thousands upon thousands of people every night. And we made these big 60-foot dome galleries I believe in the transformational power of art. I believe in the healing power of art. I just believe in the power of art in general. And I think what I love is when you combine, like one piece of art by itself can have a certain amount of impact, but when I can curate an experience that has 30 to 60 to 80 pieces of like my favorite pieces of art from all the different little gems of artists that I've met throughout the world, and when you put that all in one space and you bring someone through there for their first time, in the middle of the desert, when they're like they're thinking where they're going to get their next water, they're trying to find some sort of refuge, we create this beautiful 60-foot dome space with music and incense and like a really cool, clean vibe, and people just come in here and they start at one end, and the amount of minds that get blown, the pieces of brains that are all around the floor, by the time they reach the other end is really amazing. And so it's something that I continue to pursue this every year at Burning Man. I stopped the big massive theme camp thing because I was just tired of being responsible for the gray water and the waste of 500 people. That really didn't need to be my art form anymore, but I like bringing I don't want to feed people, I want to feed their imaginations and their souls. I don't want to feed their stomachs or run a hotel. So crazy projects that Andrew has worked on. There's this company called Obscura Digital that I met through I went to a party they had one time. A friend of mine, Random Rab, worked for them, and I got to meet their chief, their president, who's he's crazier than I am, and we just totally kind of locked imaginations, and he calls me in on these really weird jobs. Obscura is probably the most high profile projection, mapping, art installation company in the world. You come to them when you want something that's never been done before. And Travis calls me in as this little secret weapon when he gets really weird jobs that he wants something extra special for. And so this job, we got hired to basically do the visuals for the royal wedding party of the Princess of Abu Dhabi. Random. And of course, it's the Princess of Abu Dhabi. They want something, these are the Emirates, they want something that's never been done before. We talked them into a 300-foot long continuous projection screen with so the projection screen was one thing, and then it had what you call a musion level, which is, it's hard to see in this picture, but basically it's a piece of almost invisible thin plastic that's stretched as tight as a drum that comes off the edge of the screen at a 45-degree angle going off. So it would, if I had a musion screen here, it would come at the corner, the edge of the stage, and it would go up to the rafter there. And then we project downward onto a white canvas, and it bounces up onto this screen and basically creates this. You've seen like holograms, like the gorillas have. They call it the hologram projections. You see it now. That's called musion. It's called Pepper's Ghost. It was this guy back in, I think, in the 1800s that created this illusion. And so this was like a full 300-foot long screen, and I just kind of art directed these moving visual backdrops that had to go play out for like 8 to 12 hours. And it all focused on this big reveal where the princess would come out at the very end, and as she would walk past the screen, holographic butterflies followed her movements on the stage. This is a really big deal for these people. This is when she's being unveiled as the princess. This is huge, huge part of this culture. And super crazy gig. But the interesting thing about it is that this was a party that was all for women. This is like the who's who of Royal Arabic society got invited to this sort of thing. Like Oprah wouldn't have made the list to this sort of a thing. Oprah could have maybe partied in could have kind of tailgating. This is super big deal. But the really funny thing about it is that we had to design this entire show. We flew down, we set it up, we made, it had more projectors than any other job we've ever done. I'm going to show you a job we did on the Sydney Opera House. To put it in perspective, that had, I think, 18, 20K projectors. This job, I think, had 78 projectors because everything had to be double projected. You had to project double on the holographic screen, projection chandeliers. It was the kind of client that had there was no limits to the money that they had. I've never worked with a client where you could bring up anything, and if they liked it, they would just do it. They could say we want if they wanted albino giraffes, we would have found albino giraffes for them. It was just that. It was no big, money was not an object. But the funny thing about this gig was that we had, as a company, Obscura, to run the visuals, because there has to be someone that's running the show and changing the sets and doing the lighting. In this traditional Arabic culture, as a Westerner, my eyes, I am not clean enough as a man to ever gaze upon the princess. And so the whole team, we had to actually, all the guys had to like train their girlfriends to wear burqas and operate the machines. And we had to, well, as the show was going on, we had to be backstage, like kind of like fenced in, because I never saw the princess. I never actually saw the way the show looked. And we weren't allowed to videotape it at all either. So these little shots are the only thing we have of it. You know, they would like they had metal detectors that would take everybody's cell phone at the beginning. Super. The world is so unbelievably strange and amazing. And this is this is like a huge pinnacle, kind of like a career-making thing for me. Another job, Travis called me up. He's like, hey, Andrew, we're doing this project with the YouTube Symphony Orchestra. We're projecting on the Opera House. I just want you to come and be a part of this. And so this was, yeah, I don't think I've ever done anything that was as exciting or got more of my adrenaline going than this particular project. And I think, so this is a little video. Leading up to the projection, like the big show, we did these little mini shows where they teamed me up with different members of the symphony orchestra, and this is me just like jamming on my little Wacom guitar, and I'm controlling the projections in the back. That was kind of fun. I consider this to be kind of a testament of like, people talk about the speed of light, and it's a very abstract concept, like this, how fast is the speed of light? This is me working on a tablet connected to a USB cord, going to my laptop, going out to a VGA that's going to 18 different projectors that are on top of each other, twisted together to make a more powerful image. There's like 300 feet of VGA and electricity goes to all these projectors to get shot all the way across the bay. And there was zero lag from like my pen to where it was going, you know. I made a joke, I had this like funny little interview that happened, and someone asked what it was like, and I was just like, it's like drawing with a lightning bolt. I had so much electricity behind I've never had as much power behind a stroke, and it was super cool. And this was some of the work that I did. There was a piece where I worked live on the Opera House as it was being like live stream broadcast to like over, I don't know, I think over 10 million people. And that was the most nerve-wracking thing because there was like no net. Like I was working in Painter. If it crashed, there was like no backup whatsoever. And the guys that were filming it, they all wanted like the big hero shot with it. Here's a better video of it. And to get the hero shot, they had me up on the edge of this balcony, and because they wanted me and like the Opera House in the background, but what you can't really see is that at the time there was like horizontal rain, and they had me like balancing on a milk carton with my Wacom tablet with like wind, and like I can just sense the 100 million people looking at me through this little lens, and all I can think about is like, don't let the computer crash and don't let me fall. Like I don't even care what it looks like, as long as I don't fall and my computer doesn't crash, I'm gonna go to bed happy after that. Yeah, but this is a really great testament to just collaboration, collaborating with all the different musicians. We were working with this composer called MTT, he's a really famous conductor in the world of conductors. And it's beautiful to see a team that is so dialed in that, Travis is a huge inspiration of mine. He's a lot of people, what I love about Travis is that there's a lot of artists that use mediums. I like to use new media. This electromineral I make art with different mediums, and Travis's art is creating new mediums for artists to work in, which is super brilliant. if we're lucky, we know like 1 or 2 or 3 really brilliant people in our lifetime, and Travis is definitely one of those guys. Still gives me kind of chills sometimes. And this is the piece that we finished, and we called this one, this actually happened right around the time of the massive earthquake in Japan. So we called this piece Saving Grace. And it also became the cover for, the box cover for Corel for that tour that I went on. And then we sold it, Corel sold this piece, and we gained money for, we made a little bit of money for the Red Cross at the time. So I'm going to, we are coming really close. I'm just going to kind of blow through some of these really quickly. This is a piece I did for one of my favorite musicians. His name is Tipper. You guys like the time lapses? Do you guys get, okay, so I'll show you some more time lapses. And this is one of the kind of, this is a perfect example of collaboration. I'm working with a musician that just, I have an unbelievable, I couldn't express the amount of respect I have for how amazing I think this is. Tipper would be another one of those like maybe 3 or 4 geniuses that I know. I've just been a huge fan of his music ever since like 2000. He's had albums that have totally altered the fabric of my reality as I grew up. And this is one of those projects where he wanted me to make an album cover. I told him like, okay, I think I know what you're gonna want. I asked him to give me like 8 or 9 different objects or nouns and a few emotions to work with. And he just cut me loose. And yeah, this is definitely kind of one of those perfect collaborations where I didn't really when I thought about what would impress him, it wasn't a burden, it was like a challenge. Like Tipper's been blowing my mind for almost a decade. This is like, how can I really put something into it and really like blow his mind? So you can kind of like see this process. This is kind of obviously that chaos stage. I established a bit of form through this skull. I got the skull off of Google SketchUp, manipulated it within SketchUp, got the right angle. And so that creates enough of like, it's like a lightning rod for the imagination. It gives you this one grounded thing that's objective that someone can kind of focus on. And once I have this objective sort of like an anchor point, then that allows me to just go crazy with the subjective element. And so there's this balance between objective and subjective where the stronger your objectivity, the bigger risks I can take being subjective and vice versa. And so they develop kind of in tandem. I'll just go through modes of like, okay, I remember for this one, it's like, I'm gonna spend a couple days just making chaotic shapes and ribbons of color and form coming out of this exploding skull. I'm not gonna try to look into it. I'm not gonna have an agenda. I'm not gonna have a basis. I'm just gonna, sometimes I work in the subjective until I just like can't take it anymore. Until it gets to the point where it's just like, the things, I can't be subjective any longer, and I just have to turn something into a head or a dragon or a turtle or a dolphin or whatever. Again, the fun thing about this one was the process of it. So he gave me different elements. He's like, oh, I want like a spinning top and a circuit board and a mushroom and a hi-fi station. And one of the things I did is and then I requested things. I'm like, give me a screen capture of your Ableton screen, which is the software he uses to make his music. Like, I want a screen capture of this song and this song. And I ended up taking those and turning those into brushes into the painting. So it, just, for me, when you look at a digital piece, there's things that you can never recreate from a print that you can in a real painting. Like a real painting it's just got this history to it. It has all these like layers and layers of information. And unfortunately, with a digital piece, it's ones and zeros. The pixel that makes it on the top, destroys all memory of any pixel that was, any information that was underneath it. But something that I strive for in my work is what I kind of call, I've just been calling it like the residual pixel. You know, I feel that by building these layers up over and over and over and over, there's a certain energy that's created and is kind of stored within this experience. And because for me, the process is just as much of the art as the final print is. When someone can see this print on their wall and they watch the video, it opens them up to understanding like the deeper dimension that this piece of work has. You know, so it becomes a lot more of a narrative. And you can see just the thousands of just strange and weird decisions I make. And what's nice about it too is that sometimes as I record my process, if I ever get to a point of like, you know, I always want to follow this intuition. You know, like I think I know the difference between a stroke that like feels good, like a hell yes, or like a hell no type of a thing. You know, that's, if there's something that I've developed intuitively, it's kind of that. Like I know when something, you put something down, you're like, oh man, that feels good. And there's something that you're like, oh, that's not so good. You know, at the beginning stages, I just want to go for like as much of the hell yes as possible. You know, just keep like going for that, going for that. And there's some times where you're working on something, some parts start becoming precious and you get attached to things, and even the subjectivities, you start to objectify the subjective elements because there's these cool combination of patterns and shapes you've never seen before, and you don't want to ruin it, so it becomes like you're not as flexible anymore. And sometimes it kind of, you get to these points where like the image kind of like stagnates and it loses that, I don't know, that like je ne sais quoi that it had at the beginning. And what's great about the process of recording is I can like go back. If I ever get to a point where it's like, I hate this now, but 2 days ago I was in love with it, let me rewind back to where I was in love, and you can kind of follow your breadcrumbs back and you get to see, because I'm a fan of taking something, I'm an extremist, so I want to take it all the way to its irrational conclusion. And that was something my mentor Ian McCaig taught me, is like, if you don't take something all the way, you never know where you should have stopped. If you don't take something all the way, you don't know like what treasures that were just waiting for you that you didn't have the patience to get. And so I'm more of a fan of taking something till it gets destroyed and being like, oh, I probably should have taken a left turn at Albuquerque over here, but I know next time I'm going to make a left. Because if you don't take things all the way, you don't know what you're missing out on. And with digital art, you know, it's low commitment to go all the way when you save different versions. This image is called Union. This has, we call this, the droids and I call this the my free bird of art paintings. It's definitely the most like shared, reshared, and viral image I've ever made. It was made of, I got invited by these two entrepreneur, relationship, evolutionary coaches to make a portrait at their wedding. And I honestly, I didn't want to do it at the time. But my partner Phaedra talked me into it. She's like, I think you should do it. I think it'd be fun. And I went to their wedding and I witnessed just like the most amazing love ceremony I had ever seen before. Like I'd never seen two people so consciously commit to each other in front of the whole tribe of their friends. And it's just funny. It's one of these, you know, the thing is, like, we're always kind of our own worst judge and critic. And I remember working on this. They were the same way. They were like, listen, we don't want to see a sketch. Just, we love you. We just do it. And whatever you give us, we're going to love and we're going to be happy with. And I remember I was in Berlin when I was like finishing this piece. I kind of procrastinated a lot on it. I remember there was they were so into giving me input before the piece. And I was like traveling, and they wanted to have a Skype meeting where they were going to tell me everything about the piece and the whole love story and what happened. And I was really tired at the time, and I was in like a Vaughn's parking lot on the phone at this meeting, and my partner Phaedra was there kind of taking notes, and they waited and they like went off for like an hour on exactly what they wanted this painting to be, and I had completely fallen asleep during the entire phone conference, which ended up being a really good thing. But even as I was working on it, I was finishing this piece up in Berlin, and I'm like, oh my God, this is so freaking cliched. Like, I'm going to lose so many points among my real artist friends when they see like how derivative, you know, and how just like, oh, the guy's blue and the girl's warm, and I'm using like every dirty trick in the book. And I really didn't even like this piece, but you know, sometimes we're our own worst critic. But what was beautiful about that piece is that I realized it opened up on another, these different, every piece of art you're doing, it's kind of an experiment, in a way. Every piece, it's kind of like, it's people don't like hearing this, but like every art is kind of like, it's marketing. Every piece is like a marketing campaign. Every piece you put out there, I'm able, through Facebook and all this amazing Orwellian technology, you're able to really dynamically track the popularity of pieces. I mean, I can go into like unbelievable levels of details of metrics on like who likes it and why they like it and where they are that likes it. And I found that that from the success of the Union piece, I found like, wow, people are really, there's a need for images of people in love. And I just figured like, there's a lot of different things I can paint. I can make political pieces about the world falling apart, or I can make, just beautiful, flowy, pretty, new agey propaganda pieces too that people are gonna buy. But no matter what, there's always a need for like more love in the world. If you're going for more love, and that's what I tell a lot of the students that I work with when they're trying to figure out like, what do I do? What do I paint? Well, how am I going to make money? They have all these negative concepts of like the fear of what the world's like out there. I tell them it's like, man, humanity has more needs than what needs more than humans? What animal on the planet has more needs than we do? There are so many unfulfilled needs that every day we're just creating more unfulfilled needs. So if you really start tapping into like, what are the great needs of humanity and the needs of civilization, the needs of, this country or this community or your tribe or your family, love is something that we always are going to need more love. And the one reason I really, I create a lot of value and get a lot of value after these love pieces is that I know, like for a fact that, in whatever small way, creating this Union piece, it has by itself through the alchemy of abstract shapes being interpreted by the neocortex on little printed pieces of paper that come out of my little inkjet machine, I have measurably, it could be just a fraction, but I have measurably increased the amount of love on planet Earth. Just a little bit. I have made more love than there was before this image is created because people, they're fanatic about it. They have it on their house. The stories people have about when they see it, it reminds a couple, they see it and it becomes like an avatar of their highest idealized self in relationship, and like that's not pornography or propaganda, that's raising somebody up, that's what art can really do, and I think that's super cool. And we are kind of at 7, so I'm gonna just kind of go through these pieces real fast. I do some of these gigs. I do these big corporate gigs I'm not super proud of sometimes, but they're so ridiculous that I can't pass them up. I got hired by Cisco. You guys know what Cisco is? Like, yeah, I know. I was because I didn't really research Cisco very much, and I'm like, is Cisco evil? I was like kind of out there. It's kind of like, am I the baddie? Like, is this okay? Because out in Vegas, basically what they do is they hire me to make a piece of art over the course of 3 days during their conference, and I make this piece of art, and I use all their they aggregate ideas and crowdsource inspiration, and I just bury myself in a hotel suite and I just art binge for 3 days. I have this awesome deadline. I can't go past it. I turn off the phone and the email and I just go into total art hermit mode and I create this massive piece. But I was talking to the guys that hired me. I'm like, is this an evil corporation? Because they're all talking about the internet of everything, This is and it was projected. The canvas I had at the end was just massive. It was like a football field of this multi-dimensional screen. So this is a time lapse of 3 days of creativity boiled down to 45 seconds. And the concept was amazing together. It was just really looking at technology and the internet and collaboration and what it does. And their whole thing is the internet of everything. And their concept is I worry about AI, enslaving humanity or, erasing us or
using us as fertilizer.
Or fertilizer or batteries or overthrowing the universe. And they're artificial intelligence is coming. They're the sponsors of the Artificial Intelligence University. if you look at their acquisition list, all they do now is just buy like the biggest artificial intelligence like producers and companies and like think tanks. That's all Cisco's doing right now. Hundreds of billions of dollars are spending. And their whole thing is like, artificial intelligence is coming. How are we going to make as much money as possible off of it? Which is just terrifying. I was asking my friend, I'm like, are they real? Like, is Cisco evil? And he's like, well, put it this way, they create the backbone of evil. You know? Evil runs on Cisco. And it was a partner summit. So this is basically 1,500 people that comprised of all the companies that Cisco had bought, the leaders of all the companies. And I was there with my tinfoil hat on, and I'm like, man, I'm going to see some reptilians today. You know, I want to see some slit eyes. I'm going to see some faces changing. Like, I was ready. And honestly, I was really disappointed. They just seemed like dudes and just people. And I was like, no, I don't want you to be a person. I want you to be a reptilian. I want you to be an archon, like as a human, disguised as a human being. This is not my fantasy, guys. This is a piece I did for Jive Vegas, which was a slightly less evil corporation. But okay, so the cool thing, what did I say? Oh, so the point of the piece, this is what I want to get at. So this guy, they have their like, I guess you'd consider him kind of like, they're like Tony Robbins is like their Ed McMahon is like the guy, and he's like the super powerhouse, like who's ready for Cisco to take control of your reality, you know? Like, and he's the kind of guy I've watched him rehearse, and I did a whole performance during this show too, and I just know the way this guy's mind works. He's like, he is all about sound bites. He is all about like, he just needs to get up on stage and give him that little sound bite. And he was about to get on stage. It's the end of the show. It was all about like unveiling this big piece, and I was just like, oh, I'm gonna go to this guy, I'm gonna tell him what the piece is about. You know, because no one knew what the piece was about, because I just finished it like 5 minutes before they put it up on the screen. And so the whole concept of the piece was just like, you know, how, you know, we obviously we can like use our imaginations to create so much, but the concept was like, if our hearts and our minds are not, the premise of the entire piece was the beauty of when our hearts and our minds are aligned together to like create reality. And I was able to like find him right before he went on stage and tell him that. And he got up on stage and he just said it verbatim to everybody, like the exact, like no improvising whatsoever. And I was just like, yes, okay, I got just a little morsel of information. I'm gonna feel a little better about my guilty conscience. I went to India. This is the Shiva. This is a Naga Baba. This is at the Kumbh Mela, 30 million people on the banks of Varanasi. The Kumbh Mela makes Burning Man look like a tailgate party. This is a concept for an art car. I used my concept design background and made this super cool art car with the help of my awesome team and Eric and Jedi, these guys in the back. They totally were crazy enough to follow my vision and build a dune buggy that had an air-conditioned projector turret and sound system on the back. What was really cool about this thing is this is my little studio, and so I have a little kind of a chair up there, and I keep pointing at my screen like you guys can see, but I have a little laptop stand, and this is similar to the design of the Night Rainbow. It's like, I love Burning Man, I hate lugging gear around on a bicycle across the playa. That's not a good experience. So I made this vehicle so I could not have to lug gear around. And they had one of the days they burnt this massive, like 4 or 5 story structure of these two lovers. And I just went out the morning to like watch the thing burn, and they were like an hour and a half late burning it. And I was just like, oh, I'm so bored. Okay, I'm just gonna paint then. And so I just got up on my truck and put the laptop on, and I just made this painting within like the 2-hour span of them being late in igniting this at the right time. Yeah, and you can see, because I don't have like I said, I don't have a really active, like premeditated imagination. I really like working from direct observation of like molecular reality. Like photos are cool, but photos are just a fragment of something. To really be there, to just take in just like the energy. Like there were tens of thousands of people around this sculpture, all having this peak experience as it's like burning at sunrise. And I didn't really have I didn't have much of, this is a great example of just doing something for the sake of doing it. I didn't really have like an agenda behind it. I just wanted to make something awesome because I was like, this is the kind of moment where, you can take a photo of this, and you take a video of this, but that's never really going to communicate what it really meant to be here. And I think that's an opportunity that visual artists have. It's like a photo captures one fragment of a moment, and video just captures lots of different fragments. But the artist has the ability to capture like the essence of an experience, like through their own imagination. And consequently, what was really interesting is, as I kind of started finishing this piece, I did most of it on the playa, and then I finished it. I think once I got back from Burning Man, I finished it like in the Reno hotel room. But as you start realizing you have to eat to live, I'd like to think that I'm just super highly idealized all the time. But to support myself and my team and my family, I have a businessman hat that I wear sometimes too. I have to admit it, but actually I'm not ashamed to admit it at all. And so often I'm also kind of thinking like, well, so if I make this piece, how can I make a piece? Because the secret, so this is one secret, I think, if you want to support yourself as an artist, it's great to make something that makes you feel good. That's awesome. I would never not encourage people to make things that feel good. But if you are making art with the intention of putting it out into the world and having people obtain it and purchase it, basically what you need to, if you're putting art out there and you're not getting a response and people aren't buying it or it's not getting appreciated, it's not that the art is necessarily bad or good. It's that the experience that it's giving someone is not as valuable to them as what you're asking for. Because I love saying this, it never gets old. And this is a huge shift that I had. And this shift came from, I have a mentor named Eben Pagan. He's my biggest fan, and he happens to be the world's most successful internet marketer on the planet. And he's been mentoring me in just the concepts and the psychology of marketing and from the psychological standpoint of understanding the evolution of the reptile brain to the mammal brain to the neocortex. Really deep, heady, cool ways of understanding. Because the key to this is, and the key to kind of being successful in a way through a business sense is you want to ultimately understand people better than they understand themselves. If you've got that, you've got a really amazing advantage. And so I'm rambling, but for years I was just focusing on, man, I got to sell a painting, or I'm selling a limited edition print, or I'm selling a hologram. I got really caught up, or I'm selling a t-shirt on the object. I need to sell objects to support myself. That's what needs to happen. And there's a certain amount of truth to that, but the biggest breakthrough I had, it was actually from Brian Franklin, who was the male character in the Union painting. He's also an amazing entrepreneur, super cool, heady guy. And he changed everything. He said, really, we think that we buy objects, but we don't ever really buy objects. We buy experiences. All we really have is experiences. If you really want to get down to the core of it, when I bought this water bottle, obviously, I think I'm buying a water bottle. The water bottle has a price on it, that the price correlates to the water bottle. But really, if you think about it, what I'm really buying is I'm buying the experience of not being thirsty in the future in different places. That's what this really is, Or it's a clean canteen, so I'm buying the experience of feeling like I'm supporting a good company and not being thirsty at the same time at different events. That's the experience is what I'm buying. It has nothing to do with the water bottle. And I bought this because the experience of not being thirsty, to me, was more valuable than the price they were charged. I got this for free, actually. It was swag. That's a lie. Yeah. So picking this up for free. But so I started thinking about that with paintings, and what does that mean for a piece of art? you know, because the whole time I was thinking that I'm selling like I want to tell people like I use the best printers and, you know, the highest quality canvas and varnish, and we wrap it, you know, we hand wrap it on the thighs of like beautiful mulatto women, and like, just kidding, sorry. Those are all just like details. Like people don't buy details. People really don't care about that. You know, people don't buy those little tiny like gimmicks. What people really at the end of the day is all they're buying is an experience. And so the work that I sell and how I support myself is mainly through online sales. This isn't even like I'm not even like in front of somebody. I'm not even showing them what this is, like we're going to do later on with you guys. You know, it's like I basically have to convince someone to like click a series of buttons and then enter in private information. That's what I've got to do. You know, for me to feed myself, I've got to find a way of doing that. And so it's a really beautiful example of especially not selling a painting. People might not even get this object for weeks, sometimes months later, you know? So what are they buying? You know, are they buying the canvas? Are they buying the hologram? At that moment, what gets them, because the abandoned shopping cart rate is like 98% for most places. Most people make it all, you guys do that. You get all the way to the edge and then you're like, oh no. Because as soon as you think you want something, especially something as, let's talk about art is one of the most irrational purchases you can make. You know, as soon as your mind goes, I want that, there's a part of your brain that's like, oh no, you don't want that. No way you don't want that. You can't afford that right now. Like what about all the other cool stuff you can buy? We don't need this right now. And so there's a part, it's like when someone sees a piece of art, like there's like a fuse that goes off, you know, in their mind. You have this limited opportunity to get them there. And so I'm building and building up to this whole thing. So the core of what I'm trying to say that I could have said way more elegantly is that people don't buy your painting or canvas. They don't even buy your product or service. When they're hitting click, when they're putting their PayPal information or their credit card and clicking add to cart and clicking complete, what they're buying in that moment is they're buying the potential of themselves in the future with your product or service. Want me to say that again? It's kind of headed. So they're not buying your painting. They're buying the potential, not even the real thing. They're buying the potential, the experience of the potential of themselves in the future with your painting, product, or service. And if you can convince them that that future potential is more valuable than the amount of money that you're asking for, you make a sale. And if you can't convince them that it's valuable, then you don't make a sale. And that's the secret to selling art and everything. I'm doing these residency paintings now. My friend Eben, he had this beautiful apartment on the 60th floor of Manhattan with this like 180-degree view. And I was there visiting him one time, like, oh, Eben, next time you go out of town, you should totally like let me stay at your place and draw a landscape painting of New York. And he's like, maybe I'll do that. And like 3 or 4 weeks later, boom, he like calls me. And he's like, Andrew, we're going out of town. Come and hang out at our apartment in a week and draw the skyline of New York. I think I'm gonna have videos. Is this it? Yeah, and this is the video. This is the video of that. So this sounds a little weird. You guys, tell me if you think it's super annoying or you like it. A lot of times I put music on afterwards. This is actually just, these videos are usually sped up about like 15,000% to 20,000% faster. And this was actually, I just listened to all these mixes during it. And so the sound is actually the music sped up at the same speed as the video was sped up. I figured like this is like the music my kids are gonna like, you know. Like I can't understand it, it doesn't make any sense. Oh, my kids are gonna love this stuff, you know. They're just gonna listen to like, I don't know, 300 BPM, it's like noise rock. It's a little intense, but I don't know. You're very welcome. So I'm going to speed through these. I think that's, any of these videos that you see, you can also go to my Vimeo page if you want to see any of them in more detail. Another project that Travis brought me in on was we were working with the director of The Cove. You guys see that movie about the dolphins? This guy, Louis. Actually, they're OPS. Their headquarters is in Boulder. And they wanted to do this massive projection onto the UN building during the climate change rally in New York. And these were the concepts that we came up with. And they gave me the job of like I said, they kind of call me in as their secret weapon. They'll have like 20 minutes of really beautiful After Effects like videos and things, but they call me in to like create like the hero shot, or sometimes they call it, that last image that is left with people. And so it was a really cool project. Louis used to work for National Geographic, and so he had all of his National Geographic friends give us access to like any of their photo libraries. So I was able to manipulate like just beautiful, high-resolution National Geographic photos that I would like never have had permissions to use. And we ended up pulling it off and projecting this massive, this was 170 feet tall, the Secretariat building in New York. And totally, crazily pulled that off. This is what's kind of interesting about this image too. It's like the cool thing about making it, I don't know if I have a close-up of it, but you can kind of see I actually got to use, that's Afghan Girl, like Afghan Girl from National Geographic. I got Afghan Girl. I got this this guy Satori, all these animal photographs. If I had to like pay the licensing fee for all these photos, this image would have been like close to like $200,000 to $300,000. But whatever. I can't sell prints of it though, because it's too expensive. I can't even afford this piece of art. No, let's not go there. So we are coming up. We're actually a little past time. This is a mural I did for a big coffee shop in Palo Alto. Nightmare art directors, super nightmare art directors. Do you guys know SAP? Does that make, if I said SAP Technologies, you know they are? They're probably kind of evil too, right? They funded this one. It was so funny. I didn't know who they were, and I was working with. This is the time lapse video. So this is me. Instead of painting, now I'm like, I call this like painting with polygons. So I just get bored so easy. I have to come up with new ways to keep me interested in this whole thing. So this is actually, instead of drawing two-dimensional shapes, I'm manipulating three-dimensional shapes to make this image. But it was funny. I'm smart about some things in some areas. In other areas, I have no idea whatsoever. And I just knew that everything that I heard, all our communication, most of it was through email. And I knew that these guys were part of this company called like SAP Technologies. And I was talking to my friends at South by Southwest. I'm like, oh, I'm doing this mural, this huge mural for this place that's starting a coffee house to basically, I don't know why. I think the coffee house is like, they want to make it the new coffee house that incubates ideas so they can kind of keep a pulse on everything that's going on in Palo Alto. I was like, yeah, I'm working for like, I don't know, SAP Technologies. And the guys I was at South by Southwest for working with just like started laughing their asses off. They're like, SAP? Like, hey, Andrew's working for SAP Technologies. So I didn't get it until they told me that it was really funny that people call them SAP. Another evil backbone type of place. So I'm pretty much, I've got a lot of information out to you guys. So if we want to just start the Q&A, I have a couple more images I'll go through. But if anyone has things to start. Do we want to get them mic'd at all, or is that, maybe I'll just repeat your question if you tell it to me?
Are you going to be at that Shambhala coming here with temporaries?
It's not officially announced, but I think we are, yeah.
And my next one, I'm going to be seeing temporary this upcoming May at Red Rocks' performance, and I'm pretty excited about you being there as well. Are you going to be projecting onto the rocks itself?
No, we're not. Just it's like an urban legend that you can even do that. The rocks are red, and they're really, really huge. And it's possible, like if I had $250,000 and Obscura had a free weekend, I could be like, hey, Obscura, here, let's project, they could probably do the whole rocks, but it would be so expensive to do that, and they're red, and it wouldn't be that effective. So we're gonna try to do some other fun stuff.
Is there different projections that Big Gigantic uses while they project onto them?
I don't know. Is that have you seen it been effective? Really? Maybe my projector guy is just too limited. He's the one who's like, Andrew, we can't do it.
Again, you guys have used for the 3 past consecutive years a thing called Rowdy Town and Jack Under the Rocks. It's actually really cool, but
Is it?
yours would be 10 times more.
I wish. Yeah. I don't know. This tipper short, I kind of got the short, once the Grays popped into this event, I kind of got the short end of the stick on like the ideas that I had that I wanted to get past. But I think hopefully this will be the first Red Rock show. I've been told that the next one that we do,
Dave plans on going.
Huh?
Dave plans on going back again.
Maybe, I don't know. But he's like a every other year kind of guy,
One more question.
Yeah?
Do you know where I might be able to find something where Dave has a speech or an interview or something? We only have one YouTube.
Tipper?
Yeah, and I love it. I'm a huge fan of it.
No, he is the quintessential mysterious artist. I have a hard time just like getting words.
There's a reason why his logo is a question mark.
Yeah, his logo's a question mark. That's it. And he is such a, but I can just tell you, like, he is one of the most genuine. Like, I strive, like, when someone pays me a huge compliment is like their manager's name is Dave too. He considers me to be the tipper of visual artists. That's where I strive. If I can be the tipper of visual artists, I'm like, oh, sweet. I'll take that to the bank. So, yeah, and that's the mural installed. And domes. The next big thing is all going to be domes. I was in Thailand working. Sometimes life just you turn these corners and you answer an email and you find yourself in the rural countryside of Thailand in a massive 4-story Krishna ashram run by Russians that there's like 60 of them, and they just happen to be a full 360 dome visual production company. Russian Krishnas in Thailand. The main Russian is that we call him Swami. He's like the gangster Swami. One eye is like really big all the time. And he used to be in the Russian army. He has all these crazy stories, but he's just like this huge big shot Swami that just like owns like tons of organic restaurants, and he does full museum samurai shows, and we're doing contents for big projection domes. I think like Red Rocks is going to be cool because it's going to be tipper. What's really going to be cool though is the planetarium show we're doing like the next day. We're doing a Fisk Planetarium at the Fisk Planetarium.
When do tickets go on sale?
Check on my Facebook. But they'll sell out pretty damn quick for that one. That's going to be, yeah, because I think it's the Sunday. It's not official, but if it's not going to happen then, it's going to happen after that. They do like Pink Floyd laser light shows. You know what I mean? It's just like the bar is not so high to compete with the visuals at the Fisk Planetarium. But yeah, so we call him this guy. He's this Swami. This is this huge Russian Swami. He's super intimidating. We call him the gangster Swami because hey, he's gonna make you a mantra you can't refuse. That was funny. That was a really funny joke. Awesome. Any more questions?
So I believe I'm quoting you correctly, but you said Photoshop gives you everything.
Photoshop, this is a very watered down analogy. Photoshop is an amazing program. I use Photoshop probably about, the way I break down my program usage is Painter is like the sketchbook. Like when I want to explore the multi-dimensional infinite possibilities of an idea, as I would drawing in a sketchbook, I start with Painter because it's so much more versatile and flexible and fluid, and it's just more feminine. It's more organic. This Painter's like a really beautiful woman. It's super mysterious, and it'll just turn on you in a second. If you don't respect it, it'll just crash on you for no reason. Photoshop is an unbelievable program, and it's super. It's like your best friend that's like German. It's like super reliable, and it just gives you exactly what you want all the time, precisely. But Photoshop doesn't surprise me. Painter freaks me out. Some of the things it does sometimes.
You strike me as someone who would use more Illustrator if it came to Adobe, and
Oh man, I am all bitmaps. I am a bit basher. Vectors freak me out. It's too much.
But I was just kind of curious, like, what your favorite platforms were.
My favorite, like, for platforms for creativity?
Yeah.
Well, I love images. I mean, really, I'm a 2D image guy.
Well, when it comes to software.
Oh, when it comes to software, painter. Yeah, I'm a painter. If I was like stuck on a desert island with one piece of software, which, if you're stuck on a desert island with one piece of software, I don't know. I mean, gosh, you better hope you take care of your PC if you're stuck with one piece of software out there. But yeah, it would definitely be painter. I get more mileage from like the infinite creativity. I didn't mention that either. So creativity, how I think it works. Ready for this one? So you've got the whole like talent thing. I don't know if I really buy the talent thing, you know. I think that it's about discipline. You know, like the reason I'm 37, right? I'm 37. I have the level of skill that I do as a 37-year-old because I started when I was 5 years old. And I got out thousands and thousands of horrible, horrible drawings when I was really young, and I didn't care that they were bad. You know, I still get out thousands of terrible drawings now. You know, but the level of skill that I have now is based off of years and years of discipline, like exercise. You know, drawing. Like I was saying, like the blind contour drawing is. I was 7 years old. I had to look at a vase and draw it without looking down at my piece of paper. And I had to I had to never not look down and not pick the pencil up. It was the most boring, tedious thing ever, but it ingrained this like muscle memory, you know, this eye-hand coordination that I use every day. Cast drawing, learning anatomy, all these sort of things are like exercise, and they involve lots and lots of discipline. And so I think that the way that I've kind of come to understand creativity, and this is not like the end-all, be-all definition. This is like not the Bible, but I'm always kind of evolving my interpretation of it. But the way that I kind of see it now is people talk about like talent, and they talk about like the muse. You guys heard that expression? Like there's this muse, there's this kind of field. The way I kind of think of it, I believe that the spirit, there is a living conscious spirit of creativity that exists, and it's infinite, and it exists throughout the entire universe. It's sentient, it's magical, it's undefinable, it's conscious, it's got a personality, it's got a sense of humor, it's everything and nothing at the same time. But from my limited experience, I know that I believe that it really exists as a field, and it's out there. And as an artist, you know, a lot of what my work involves is creating a container that allows that energy to come in and come through me. You know, whether that's making a really nice studio, having the super awesome Aeron chair, getting nice music, turning your iPhone off, closing Facebook, lighting incense, whatever you got to do. You just like, it's like surfing, you know, you just want to like get right up to the edge of that wave. If you don't paddle to the wave, you're never going to be able to surf down there. So that's a big part of it. And then once you feel this energy coming on, then it's all about like getting out of the way, you getting out of its way to let it like really come through. And I think that's kind of even cliched. Like I don't think I made that up. I think I've definitely heard people say things like that. But my new theory, what I'm trying to understand is that I think that there are, within all of the vibrations and the infinite amount of frequencies of this spectrum of, say, universal creativity that chooses mankind as its vehicle to express itself, I believe that there are different calibers of the quality of that muse energy that exists. And I'm totally like anthropomorphizing like the divine. I'm putting like Mickey Mouse ears on like this like infinite, eternal, multidimensional maybe that I'm just telling you guys might exist. However, I feel that, my theory, that the quality of the inspiration that comes down, and more anthropomorphizing, I think that it is actually particular. I think that it it knows that its energy is precious. And I think that it is actually very discerning in where and who. I don't believe it, I mean, I think it's the general, like the general admission of the creative spirit is open to everyone at all times, in all lifetimes, simultaneously, now and forever, Alpha, Omega. However, I think that there's some really like high quality ones that exist too, and I think that they're discerning, and that the more you discipline yourself in your practice and your understanding of tools, like I memorize these tools. I can be in a completely, and guiltily have been in, bonkers out of mind states of mind, body, frequency, and I can still manipulate this thing. You know, I can be in dimension X and I know where my hotkeys are because they're just part of my muscle memories. I've committed it. It's not even conscious anymore. And so depending on how the quality and the caliber of your discipline is equal and or relative to the quality and caliber of the inspiration that comes through and chooses you. Maybe. Maybe not. I like it. I think it makes sense.
So I'm a software engineer, and as you are I guess, creative technologist, I'm curious to know what you feel is limiting currently with how you create your pieces.
Oh, what?
Maybe specifically one thing that I thought I want to share is the ability for you to version your pieces as you go.
Ability to what?
Your ability to version your pieces as you develop them.
Version?
Save your files
Uh-huh.
and keep them and store them. And
Yeah.
I'm curious what you feel is limiting about that.
Oh man, there's so many limits. And actually, I'm excited. I'm kind of excited that I'm at a point right now where I feel that there are limits, because I believe that where we're, I mean, if you believe in the Moore's Law story, obviously there might be a point where it's not, or it's totally irrelevant. But I'm kind of excited that that I still get frustrated. Like this laptop is like the most maxed out Apple laptop you can get, and I am at the edge of it like daily. You know, I'm so annoyed. You know, so biggest limitations are like my wish list, I guess is another way. I don't want to focus on what do I want that isn't here. I want infinite pixels. I want an infinite pixel canvas in every direction. You know, I want absolutely no limits to how big I can make. I don't want anything slowing down. I don't want to ever come up against a beach ball or like a little processing menu when I'm working, because I don't think it just seems ridiculous that happens anymore. So once we can get just, even Photoshop maxes out at 30,000 pixels across. What the heck is that? 30,000 pixels? That's not even the length of this room on a high-res image. So I get really pissed off that they don't do that. So infinite pixels would be a good place to start.
Can't you always string images together, though?
Yeah, but you can't like see it at one time. I want to be able to like, and I'm talking to a programmer about this right now. We're trying to make an image viewer that's just infinite. Like you have this one image and you can move around without any sort of lag whatsoever. And not just that, like, not a treadmill. A lot of them, it's like you move up here and then like as you get down here, this part replaces the top and you've got more there. I just want one solid, like I can go. And with VR, so VR is, if you guys don't know, VR is like where it's all going. Like this Dome project is actually, it's just the stepping stone between like the VR universe. Like what, if you guys have an opinion, if you think virtual reality is going to catch on, your opinion is actually totally irrelevant, unfortunately, because it will be the next thing, whether we want it to be or not. And for better or worse, it's actually kind of beautiful and terrifying, the possibilities. I just finished reading Ready Player One. You guys have, it's super cool. I just like finished listening to the audiobook on the plane today. It was so cool. Oh, man. So yeah, it's like, you know, it's going to be a big double-edged sword. But I think the creative possibilities, like if I can start painting in a virtual reality space, you know, like it's, because I am in virtual reality. Like when I'm in the zone, this is not like a screen that I'm looking for. This is a window. Like this is my porthole into the world of my imagination. You know, that's another thing too. I want like infinite resolution of a screen. You know, I mean, 5,000 pixels across. Are you kidding me? I pissed 5,000 pixels, man. It's like nothing. 5K? 5 million K. So.
Wait, what's that?
So this is Phaedroid. I didn't really get into this. So this is a great example. This is me and my former wife, the lovely Phaedrona Jones. And this is a performance act that we created, or it kind of, this is a good way of saying it, I think it actually chose to come through us at the right moment. And this is a really great example when I talk about the creative field, like as an energy. So her name is Phaedrona, her name is Phaedra, and my name is Android. And so we called this act Phaedroid. And basically she dances, and her dancing is completely improvised. She studied Indian classical and contemporary ballet. And so her work is just this fusion, but it's super devotional. When she goes into the dance, she like completely dissolves and loses herself in this movement. And my job is I'm watching her dance, and I have a projector on her with my tablet, and I'm basically, let me go back, so let me see it again. I'm following her. I have a piece of software that generates these dynamic particles that are basically kind of like attached to the tip of my Wacom pen. And so I'm just dancing with her. I'm like following her movements. And psychologically, when you're in the zone, I'm not just following her, like my consciousness like is this particle of light that's dancing with her. So what you're kind of seeing is my imagination dancing with her on stage, because I just never really got around to like salsa lessons or anything like that. And so I'm way more comfortable dancing as a projected, abstract, visual piece of light that I code than I am with my physical body. But this is the reason I think this is a really powerful. So there's a lot of, now there's a huge amount of projection shows. We see all this new media and projections and dancing and quixotic and all these things, and a lot of them are super amazing, and I think they're total marvels to choreography and technical skill and like pre-planning, and they're just like amazing testaments that what can happen with that. What makes this really different is that this is like 100% improvised. There's no choreography that she's working with. There's no like set. The particles are chosen at random intervals. I have a little bit of control over it, but it's pretty much just like left or right. And because the conditions are like kind of chaotic neutral, what we find ends up happening is that our collaboration, the frequency, I'm sounding like such a hippie. The energy that the opportunity that we create as someone that's completely like let go of herself and her identity, dancing with so she's dancing with what she has come to understand like the creative force as, and I'm kind of in conjunction with her. The show is called Phaedroid, and even though it's made up of both of our names, Phaedroid was the name we actually gave the personality of this energy that we actually work with in this thing. And it sounds super hippie, and I have no evidence to back this up whatsoever. You just have to take my word for it. But
it's like essentially human contact dancing, though, right?
Yeah.
Like with her in the physical manifestation and you in a visual manifestation.
Sure. So the trippy part about this, which is really interesting, and it really only comes through when we would do these like practice sessions of like dusk till dawn practice sessions and rehearse. Our rehearsal was just to like improvise for 6 hours in a row. And we would do this at this warehouse I had in San Francisco. And the part that got really, kind of mystical and supernatural, where we felt, sometimes you can feel when something's in a room, if you go in a house that's weird energy or gets cold, I don't know. I'm a little sensitive. I can feel bad vibes or good vibes or something else is here kind of vibes sometimes. I'm learning a little bit more. Sometimes I'm probably just making it up. But beyond the, tangibly being able to feel like a charge that was in the room, what would happen, and it takes a little bit to follow this. So her experience is she's just dancing up against a white wall with she can't see the projections. It just looks like a beam of light like hitting her. And she just dances on end to good music that we select. I can see her, and I'm trying to kind of do particles that I think, I choose different particles based off if I think it like matches. Some are good for slow movements, some are good for like fast, erratic movements, some are good for There's different particles for different types of flows. But what we have, and we had this videotaped on multiple occasions, is that we'd be all by ourselves videotaping this in this big loft, and she would be dancing, and what would happen time and time again is that I would change the particle. Follow me so far. So I would change the particle. She has no idea the particle changed. As soon as I changed the particle, her dancing, because she's dancing to this energy, would completely shift and start following the flow of the particle, which she would have no way of knowing. So that's what we call phaedroid. We felt that there was an energy, and I see a couple heads nodding. That's super cool. It makes it feel way less crazy. Thank you, guys. So the phaedroid is another energy that's conscious of me and conscious of her, that's observing the entire situation and then feeding her information directly on the feedback that it's getting from what she can't see with her eyes. Boogie, boogie, boogie. Isn't this amazing? Yeah, it makes sense. Why not? Hey, and it's just, I could be crazy, but I'd rather be crazy and wrong than like super skeptical and right all the time. It's not. If you're right and it's not a very fun explanation, that's not a lot of fun. So.
To break down that magic, just a teeny bit, I know there's some software behind that as well. So I know you use the Painter, but what is the animation software? I get the Wacom and Painter. What is the thing that's
called Particle Illusion?
Particle Illusion, sir. Okay.
That's the software that you make. I engineer code like all these different particles. Yeah, okay. I mean like engineer meaning like you've got like 500 slider bars, and you can import like JPEGs or PNGs or animation sequences. So I craft them, I give them the dynamics and physics and kind of personalities to them all.
Okay.
And that's in an editor called Particle Illusion. And then you take those different little files that make up each different one, and then you bake them into like one master file. And then there's another software called Particle Viewer, and it's just the viewer. It's like a 5 megabyte piece of software, which is what you're actually seeing. And that's the piece of software that I'm actually projecting. It's just the preview window. This piece of software was designed, the biggest, they haven't updated this piece of software since 2006. And it's horrible. I mean, it's amazing, and it's so buggy, and it crashes and falls apart at the worst times all the time. And the biggest use you see for particle illusion, if you ever want to see like, where have I seen this before? It's usually at like commercials for like used car lots, like at 4 in the morning. It's like an explosion happens behind Luis. It's like that's what the program is actually used for, is super cheesy effects that you composite onto like low-grade video.
And why did you choose that if it's so buggy or a pain in the ass?
It just happened. I don't know. I mean, I had a glass of wine. I was like sitting around looking at, this is a weird piece of software. What's this going to do? Woo! Totally accidental. I don't know. It's totally good enough for the life of the editing them and creating them can be super buggy. The viewer, the software I use, it was just an adjunct thing that you could test out the particles before you rendered them on your like video. So the guy developing this had no idea he was giving birth to like a new psychedelic form of like modern dance and technology. And I've talked to him about it. He doesn't really, he's like, whatever. I thought he'd be impressed. I showed him stuff. I'm like, hey, put your stuff up on the Sydney Opera House. He's like, okay. So yeah, that's what it is.
And that's it. Those are the only functions in a Wacom.
Mm-hmm.
Have you tried without the Wacom? With the air thing, with the MIDI controllers that you can mess with in the air?
It's really, what it's all about. And way of thinking of it, like, that would be kind of cool, and I could see kind of like a razzle-dazzleness of that might be kind of interesting. But so and people ask me like, Andrew, why do you have such a big Wacom? Like, what are you trying to compensate for with your Wacom? It's just so intense. I mean, I have a small one that I travel with too. So the reason that I've got such a huge Wacom tablet is that it's really about just the quality of information. If you really think about it, it's just like my arm and my wrist are capable. This is where all the information is. All the information gets expressed like through the heart, through the mind, through the eyes, into here. And your hand is capable of an infinite amount of strokes. Like you could look at a figure and there's nothing physically stopping your body from making like the perfect outline of a figure or Abraham Lincoln or a Volkswagen. Like there's no physical barriers. It's just like the mind, mental concept of that. So this is an amazing, if we just look at from the shoulder here, a huge potential for information being conveyed into something. What this is, one way of looking at it, and I think a lot of art and creativity and being an artist is about looking at things, just the pivoting, looking at it in slightly different ways and not taking it for granted. This is really just an information aggregator. This thing is all about just collecting information, and that's what the Wacom tablet does. That's why the pens have thousands of levels of pressure sensitivity, and they're always trying to sell you on the experience of having more levels of pressure sensitivity because they think that's what the experience that you want. But it's just gathering human movement. So obviously, the bigger a tablet, the more range of motion, the more physical information I'm going to be able to put in here, the deeper the amount of information is going to come out on the canvas. So the precision that I get with this, I could not imagine with current technology that any of the leap motion stuff would be anywhere close as aggregating as much detailed information as my trusty Wacom Steed does. And if it's not broke, just don't fix it because there's plenty of other stuff that's going to break. Yes?
How big are your files?
Pixel, like width and height, or memory-wise? Meaning as flat printable images or Photoshop layered files?
Like layered files.
I try to, so my process is I max out. I think when you start off, it's kind of like when you start off making, like digital musicians, like when you starting off at Ableton, you're going to just make like 1,000 songs, you know what I mean? It's so new. When I was first starting out, I would have files that had like 500 layers, and I made this, I wanted to add a drop shadow, new layer. I wanted to add a detail of the eye highlight, new layer, you know, all the time. Oh, look, I got hundreds of layers, it's so epic, you know? But what I ended up finding, you know, I'm all about the conservation of my time and my energy, because my time and my energy is the most precious thing I have. The experience of drawing is my most valuable experience. Like all these weird things I do and the projections and the shows and the selling stuff to people and art, it's pretty much just so I can afford more of the experience of making art at the end of the day. You know, that's the most valuable thing I can do is to make art. You know, I haven't found anything else that I like more than that, so I do that. So with the file size thing, that was weird how that went into that. But I find that there's things I miss about traditional art. One of the things I miss is the commitment that you have to make to a painting. When you apply a glaze, there's no undo. When you make this stroke or you add this layer or this new texture, you can't go back. You've got to like believe in yourself and move like bravely move forward like into the abyss with the painting. And with digital, sometimes it's like this, it's like no committal. You know, it's like, oh, I'll make another layer, oh, I'll erase it. Or I'll do this, oh, maybe I want to change this. And I got these huge files that ended up taking and sucking up way too much of my time. So what I do, if I get a file that gets up to 2 or 3 or 4 gigabytes, if it ever gets that big, usually as soon as it starts slowing down my hardware, when we talked about limitations, as soon as I feel the slightest bit of lag, I'll just flatten it. Boom. That's it. No more changes. No soup for you. Just flatten the image and just commit and you move forward. So I like to flatten a lot because I'm just like, I don't need all those options, you know. Whatever, you know. Eric.
I just remember about 10 years ago, a Massive Black video, a demo we did. It was just about layers and about flattening. But a really good term you put out there that inspired other artists and helped me through not just artistic decisions, but lots of life decisions, hell no or fuck yes. And when you're looking at something, if it's not a fuck yes, then it's a hell no, you just get rid of it, and you flatten it, and you move on.
Yeah.
And, you know,
I edited myself.
the F-bomb, whatever, but it's...
Yeah, I called it hell. I called it hell yes. If you guys noticed, I could have called it. This is a classy crowd, you know. Stay classy, San Diego. You know, it's totally okay.
Heck yes or heck no?
Heck yes.
Heck yes or heck no?
No, there is a certain je ne sais quoi with the F word.
Those were powerful words of advice that inspired me a decade ago.
And you know, thank you, Eric. And as with any, you know, beautiful universal truths, I think the truth is always simple, and that can be. I think any major like creative little gem or lesson, if it's really worth its salt, it can also be applied to your life. When you're doing things in your life, it should be an F yes or an F no. And I think that's what intuition is. As we get older, we get better at recognizing what are the hell yeses and what are the hell nos, because otherwise we're just building temples to compromise. Who wants a temple to compromise? I don't. I don't want a temple to compromise. Yes. We have to bravely fail in new directions all the time. Keep it going. Come on, somebody. Or we're going to go home. Does somebody want questions?
Is there a near or possible any future in holograms with you?
Is there what?
A future with holograms with you?
You mean not like the Raja lenticulars, but like actual three-dimensional?
Like the Tupac, Coachella.
Yeah, see, those aren't holograms. Those are just, it's just smoke and mirrors. It's just the projection on a piece of plastic at an angle.
More so 3D.
It's not 3D though. It's 2D. It looks. It's like. Ooh, you can fool yourself. I mean, a hologram. I think like this is. This is a hologram. We're in a hologram right now. Don't tell everybody else, but we're actually in a hologram right now. This is all just particles of light moving in slow vibrations. Everything is light. Now this is the hologram. No, really, this is the hologram.
I have one more question.
Yeah.
Pictures like you did before, I don't know if everyone's seen it, but the piece you did after the election, socio-political commentary
Yeah.
you do. That was such a powerful picture, what that conveyed. I mean, it summed up the whole U.S. system in one picture. Do you have more plans to do, powerful pictures?
You know what?
You have a big audience and you have a lot of power to influence people through your pen.
Yeah. Eric, I appreciate your vigilance in reminding me, because I do. That's something that I keep wanting to like get back into, But there's a lot of things that are brewing. What has been like in the works for a while now is I almost went to Bahrain a little while ago, but it didn't work out. The financing fell through, but I'm really, the piece that's kind of like brewing, and sometimes, another secret, it's sometimes you don't want to talk about pieces. When you start talking about pieces you're going to do in the future, whatever that up there doesn't like it when you predict what you're going to do. It's like, fuck you, man, I'm not going to do what you want me to do. I will say, I can think it's very fair to say, there's pieces that have been just like bubbling that'll really focus on just the Middle East right now. The relationship between the U.S. and ISIS and Gaza and Israel and Zion. There's just so much. For a long time, I've just been called to this neo-Guernica type of thing that just, because it just gets me. When I think about it, it just drives me crazy when I think about what's going on out there. And so that's just been. It's about getting in the right mindset, because sometimes I get into it and it's just oh man, you can't force that muse at all. It has to really, you have to be in a really good space for that to kind of come through. But there's definitely going to be more of those. It's definitely on the tip, because that's the thing, is this, because that's the thing too, as you grow a bigger audience, it's you need to be more, it's a higher caliber of being responsible too. I want to make sure what I'm saying. Yeah. So off topic. Yeah.
Just what's next for you? What do you? It seems like you've done a lot of interesting work. I know you're doing a lot of installations and things. Just, is there something that you're getting excited about that you haven't done? Do you not know what that is yet? Just wondering what you're.
Sure, that's an awesome question. I wake up in the morning. What's next? So presently, the reason I was in Thailand was meeting with the gangster Swami Krishna Russians to do a massive 360 dome tour through America and in the Ukraine. So I think really kind of cultivating this whole, the immersive dome, the canvas of that just gives some, did you guys anyone see the video I posted on YouTube? Dude, actually I'm not connected to the internet, but if you go to my Facebook page, this video, seriously, I was looking at it and I was recording it, and one of the guys Andrew, don't record video, just fucking enjoy it, just be here now, I was just I'm gonna record one video. And I was to make Facebook work, you gotta it's like this addiction. You just have to like feed it every day, or else it doesn't. Its algorithms like give you the cold shoulders. I was like, oh man, I need to post something tonight. I was like going to be like, I'm gonna post this video, whatever. Fuck it. I'm not even gonna upload it to YouTube. I'm just gonna post it on Facebook. 2 million impressions in like 3 or 4 days. Just like stupid amounts of attention that got. So that for me was like, oh wow, I thought this was okay, but obviously I put this out into the field of consciousness, and the field of consciousness says, auspiciously, yes, we want this. Swami said it was, he's like, Krishna is definitely giving his blessing to a project. The Vedic knowledge needs to be shared. So I think that's going to be really interesting. We're going to start with a 15-foot immersive dome, which is, it's cool. It's like super intimate. You get in with like 15 friends, and it's like full, like vacuum sealed on the inside, so it's one continuous surface. And that's what the video is taking of, and it's really effective because you're right in there, and so it's all the way around you. And I like that because it's going to be a really good precursor to virtual reality, because it kind of puts you in like a virtual three-dimensional space, but you don't have like the control of looking around, but you can be in it with like several, up to like 20 people. So we're going to have that be like the inner focal point gem of larger 60-foot domes. So it's going to be like a dome within dome experience. So the gallery is going to be on the inside of the dome. Then the center is going to be this projection dome inside. And Krishna willing, we're going to be bringing that to LIB, Symbiosis, and Burning Man. And that's where we're going to like, those are like where we test things out and like kick the wheels and break things. And if we can do it without totally breaking it, then we're going to expand and make it bigger. But I think the dome is going to be a great intermediate step between like full virtual experiences, because that's, I mean, you do that right, you're gonna, like I think Terence McKenna said that virtual reality will change what being means to us, because like when I said it's all about experience, like that's really true. All our life is just, we're just chasing different experiences. And you can imagine an art form that just delivers experiences to you, I mean, it's like it's going to totally redefine the value we put on experience, So.
And you did mention Terence McKenna before. Did you meet him?
Mm-mm.
All right. I was going to be super impressed, but now not so much, but all right.
Yeah, sorry. Wah, wah, wah. He died. He died before I got alternative. No, I never met him.
Do you see the dome at the Burn?
This year.
This year.
Mm-hmm. We were going to do, we were really bummed out. The plan this year was actually to make an art gallery out of a 747 airplane. You saw that project? So our project was, the secret of that project was we were doing the full gallery inside the airplane. But it looks like the project has expanded and gotten so massive. That's going to be 2016. So for 2015, we're just going to focus on awesome 60-foot Esplanade dome, virtual 360 projected dome inside the dome, still tons of art, awesome music.
We have a triple-decker bus you can pimp out if you want.
Oh yeah? Cool. Is that the Integral?
Yeah, Purple Palace.
Is Mystic collaborating with that now? Is that Purple Palace? I know Mystic's doing like an art card. I don't know if they were. We'll talk about it later. Sorry.
Yeah.
We're boring them with our Burning Man cult gossip.
You just got me like on a tangent with all this virtual reality stuff, but have you messed with Oculus Rift at all and designing that? Because that could almost be like an infinite portal, like a portal to
Yeah,
create.
it can be, but it's still, you're still very limited on like the resolution. Like Oculus is still just like a couple iPhones on your face. You know what I mean? I kickstarted our Indiegogo something like a year ago that was recommended by my German friend that's like super big in the virtual reality. It hasn't arrived yet. I should actually check up on it, but it's actually totally like Ready Player One. It's this set of goggles that directly beams the images like into your retina. Like that's what's up. That's not scary at all. That is totally what's up. That's when you get infinite pixels, when you're just going, just cut the middleman out altogether. Just go right, just like mainline it right into your brain. That'd be awesome. So.
But I almost see like the dome project that you're doing almost as like an infinite canvas. I understand the creative process is really limited with today's software.
Yeah.
But with the dome, like you have that entire bottom that's not visible that you can essentially keep going around. So the canvas is almost unlimited, isn't it?
It can. It just depends on, with that, then the limitations are so I could have one image on this screen and I could like move it, and that's just, these pixels are like image, 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 image. For the dome, I have to tell 7 different projectors what aspect to do, and that's a lot of pushing power and pixels, and it gets a little trickier for dynamic. It's, but we can just curate really good baked-in experiences. But we are working on some. I'm trying to do more real-time stuff within the dome. That's what we're working on. So.
Is the dome as disorienting as Oculus Rift is?
No.
Vertigo thing?
No, it's super cool because it's way chiller because you just kind of lay down and you're just like, oh, and you can like go into it. I mean, you can make it really disorienting if you want to, but the whole team's pretty shanty about stuff. We just want slow, beautiful, moving, flowing type of things happening.
Is the planetarium a larger scale than these domes you're talking about?
Oh yeah,
Basically
yeah.
Similar.
Yeah, the planetarium is.
Before your tour, right?
It is. Yeah, the planetarium is going to be a good sort of like test out. But the cool thing about all the content that we're making for the dome and for the planetarium as well, it works across board. Like the animation that we make for a planetarium will work for a dome, will work for a 90-foot. So the content's going to be the same. So we're going to deploy the domes in like cool areas and festivals and events where, because the name of the game for us is just like, how do we call like, we have an expression that, selling kind of consciousness, like the marketing of consciousness, we call it like smuggling donkeys. We want to like smuggle as many donkeys as possible, So there's a huge donkey smuggling potential within domes at festivals and things like that. And non-festivals too. We did a big show at South by Southwest and we got to, get a little out of the choir and get people. But the planetarium, that's really great grounds. Because, and you don't have to have a glow stick in your hair to get in, to a planetarium. They're like much more respectable places, So, I don't know. I mean, I really want to make art that like appeals to like all different multi-generational and kids and adults. I don't want it to just be some cool little subculture psychedelic thing. Like I think that the experience that I'm after is something that it can really touch anyone meet anywhere. Like I think art that really works is art that meets anybody no matter where they're at. Culture, status, caste, whatever, can really like speak to them, kind of speak to that sort of truth. But the dome is going to be, I think it'll be like I said, it'll be an awesome kind of precursor to that. And the planetariums are great because once you have content, then it's like with the dome, I mean, it takes a lot of money and a lot of calories to put a 60-foot dome up and a 15-foot and the projections and the spider box and the rigging and the cables and the everything. Where planetariums, they're just already done.
Check out the Omnimax in Cincinnati. It's like
the
country. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. In July, the first show we have planned is in the Ukraine. I guess Kiev has some amazing planetarium out there that we're going to do. That's going to be our first big planetarium show. And then, we get that. You shop it around. Because I want festivals are cool, but if we need to, I'm going to smuggle way more donkeys if I can do shows where, 5th graders do their field trip to the show. It's like, that's where I want to get like 11-year-olds.
The people in that culture know your artwork. You're very well known in the festival scene. I mean, why not expand to all these other demographics that are out there? I mean, just spread the love.
Totally. This is so fun, guys. I could do something. One more question. Almost.
Another question. I just wanted to thank you for sharing your gifts and your influence on such a large scale, but also taking time to participate and be part of all these smaller projects that really mean so much to so many people.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you, everyone here that made this beautiful space and gave us the opportunity to share in this knowledge and encounter each other and have this experience. So hats off to you guys. And hats off almost to my amazing team. Hats off to my mom first, who, without her, none of this would be possible without this beautiful woman. And my amazing team of Eric and Jedi and Annie Ray Droid over there that's selling the merch. I wouldn't be able to do this. I wouldn't be able to just arrive at an airport from Tokyo and just jaunt right in here and have this thing be all set up without these guys. So thank you guys so much, you guys. I love having you on my team. You bet. Awesome.